Under the shadow of pre-dawn skies, Lucius, a seasoned soldier of Carthaginian allegiance, stood among the ranks, feeling the crisp alpine air pricking his skin. It was the year 218 BC, and the world as he knew it was on a precipice of change. Lucius was a part of Hannibal Barca's daring army, an army that sought to achieve the impossible, a march over the towering and treacherous Alps to reach the heart of Rome itself. Lucius had always been a man driven by the tides of fortune and fate. From his youthful days of reckless abandon on the streets of Carthage, his life had been a string of chance events, leading him to the formidable ranks of Hannibal's forces. In that cold morning light, even his seasoned soul harbored a twinge of trepidation at the thought of awaiting trials. For many nights, Lucius had listened to the whispers of their leader's bold ambition. Hannibal, with his penetrating gaze and undeniable presence, filled every corner of the camp with a fervor that was both inspiring and daunting. Lucius, like many others, found himself captivated by the man's unyielding spirit, each word and command resonating with a tangible conviction. Drums began to beat a slow, rhythmic pulse through the valley, urging the men to shoulder their burdens and press forward. Lucius tightened his grip on his spear, his companion through countless skirmishes as they began their ascent. Veterans grumbled lightly about the snow and the rugged paths. Younger soldiers exchanged quiet murmurs of excitement mingled with fear. Alongside them, elephants, the magnificent, mighty beasts from Africa, bellowed plaintively, their voices echoing like ancient callings through the glacier winds. The ascent, Lucius soon realized, demanded more than physical strength. It called for a resilience of spirit. The path was narrow and dangerous, constantly threatening to claim the unwary with its precipitous cliffs and hidden traps of ice and snow. As the soldiers carefully plotted each step, they reflected upon their fates, for each was acutely aware of their bearings on a stage that was larger than any they had imagined. One evening, while the army halted to rest at the base of a sheer, resolute cliff, Lucius found himself gazing up at the stars. They glittered frostily above, indifferent to the turmoil and conquests of men. In those moments, Lucius realized their journey was not just a martial maneuver, but a weave in the grand tapestry of history, a story for the ages. As embers of campfires flickered a subdued glow against the stark, snowy canvas, Lucius closed his eyes, drifting into a restless sleep. His dreams were vivid, of swaying grasslands echoing with hoofbeats, the clash of swords, and the rallying call of an empire on the march. In the depth of his slumber, the spirit of Carthage sang to him, soothing his apprehensions, binding him tighter to the cause that was greater than any single man. With the dawn, they would rise to climb further, to meet whatever lay beyond the mountains, destiny and the world of ancient Rome. And so Lucius dreamt on, cloaked in the resolve of Hannibal's vision, a single soldier among thousands, marching steadfastly into the annals of time. The morning air hung heavy with the tense anticipation of the unknown as Lucius rose with the light of the sun's first rays peeking over the jagged alpine peaks. The ground was frozen beneath him, and his breath formed clouds in the frigid air as he gathered his gear, prepared to continue the arduous journey over the mountains. The atmosphere among the soldiers and their beasts was charged with the collective will to surmount the seemingly insurmountable. The path ahead was another test of the army's resilience. As the day wore on, the terrain grew even more unforgiving. Deep chasms and narrow passages frequently blocked their path, forcing them to find precarious routes around nature's obstacles. The snow under their feet during the days filled with sunlight began to melt only to freeze again at night, creating hidden threats of ice slicks that made gaining even a few meters a tremendous effort. Lucius and his fellow soldiers moved with careful precision, carrying on their backs the weight of Carthage's hope, inching their way higher and deeper into the Alps. His thoughts sometimes drifted to the warm stone of Carthage, far from these cold cliffs. Yet the sounds of myriad voices, the clang of weapons, the trumpet blast of elephants, pulled his focus back to the here and now, to that crucial moment in history. One particularly treacherous day saw a portion of their path obliterated by a landslide. The soldiers were forced to halt, and a murmur of unease rippled through the ranks. Hannibal, with his commanding presence, stepped forward to assess the situation, quickly issuing orders to clear a new path. Lucius recalled how Hannibal took inspiration from the mountain goats they had seen, scaling steep faces, nimbly finding new ways over the delicate edges. Under the guidance of their leader, the task began. Axes rang out against the rock, carving and chiseling a way forward. Lucius, like his comrades, worked tirelessly, hammering and hauling debris, driven by a shared determination. It was a brutal undertaking, their muscles burning from exertion and the biting cold finding every chink in their armor. During these pauses, Lucius often watched the elephants, majestic despite the difficulties they faced. While they had lost a few of these colossal creatures to the elements, those remaining carried their task with solemn dignity, their trumpeting calls rebounding off the mountainsides with an invigorating resonance that lifted the weary spirits of the men. As the path cleared and their advance continued, there was little time for rest. Yet, within their grueling nobility of purpose, Lucius felt an unwavering connection, a bond forged in adversity, each soldier a link in a formidable chain, each step placing Carthage closer to confronting their Roman adversaries. Nights were spent huddled around fires, warm meals a reminiscence to home, where conversations veered from strategies to reminders of loved ones waiting far away. For Lucius, these moments were crucial pauses, time to rekindle the fierce spirit that burned beneath their wearied exteriors. As they pushed onward, finally descending the steep cliffs towards the Italian plains, Lucius could feel the shift in the air. The scent of damp earth reached him, heralding a transition from mountain to flatland. He was part of an army that had achieved the unthinkable, traversing the Alps, a feat that would echo through time, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shape the ancient world. In that silent victory of reaching the valleys below, Lucius realized this march was not merely about war. It was also about outlasting the barriers that nature or man might place in their path. His heart soared with hope, firm in the knowledge that they stood on the brink of history. And so onward they would press, each step now filled with renewed purpose, ever forward towards their fate in Rome. The tranquil plains of northern Italy stretched before Lucius's gaze as he and his comrades descended from the brutal grasp of the alpine terrain. A soft, welcoming breeze brushed against his weary face, carrying with it the sense of a land ripe for conquest. As the pressures of the mountain journey began to ebb away, the ever-present hum of battle readiness remained, woven tightly into the camaraderie that had grown among the men. With the army regrouping on the flat, lush landscape below, Hannibal convened his commanders to strategize. They had broken through what many deemed an impenetrable barrier, but now lay ahead the formidable armies of Rome, surely bracing for a confrontation of their own. Lucius, though too junior to partake directly in such councils, was heartened by the whispers that reached the ranks. There was confidence and expectation. It was time for battle. The army pressed on in great strides, buoyed by their recent triumph and spurred by the prospect of confronting Rome on its own soil. Lucius felt pride swelling within as they moved southward, aware that their march thus far was an achievement worthy of tales yet untold. Alongside the mass of soldiers, the elephants strode with renewed vigor, their massive feet leaving deep, purposeful prints in the fertile ground, reminders of their extraordinary journey. Days later, their first sighting of the enemy came as they approached the banks of the river Trebia. Rumour had it that a Roman force, commanded by Consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus, awaited them, eager to expel the bold invaders and conjure a show of Roman strength. Anticipation rippled through the camp, nerves steeled and weapons readied as they braced for the inevitable confrontation. On an overcast morning, as tendrils of mist rose from the Trebia's flowing waters, the tension broke. Harsh Roman war cries mingled with the clatter of weapons, blaring a defiant challenge across the river. Lucius stood among his comrades on the opposite bank, the earth beneath him trembling with the impending clash. In a deft maneuver, Hannibal exploited the natural landscape and the strategic patience that had become his hallmark. Under the veil of fog and early light, part of the Carthaginian cavalry crossed the river to lure the Romans into a trap. Lucius and the infantry held their breath, watching the sequence of events unfold with the precision of a masterful game. As the Roman forces surged forward, goaded by the ruse, Hannibal's hidden troops emerged from their concealing positions, descending like a hawk upon prey. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Cries of conflict soared to the heavens, and the brutal dance of war unfolded before Lucius. He was plunged into the midst of the fray, the familiar heft of his spear in his hand, each thrust and parry a testament to his resolve to survive. The clash surged and waned. The mighty Carthaginian elephants, like living battering rams, charged the Roman lines, their presence both majestic and terrifying. Their trumpeting cries rose triumphantly over the tumult, rallying Carthaginian spirits as they pushed against the legions. Despite the intensity of combat, Lucius's resolve held firm. He fought with a fervor nurtured through hardship and triumph. The Romans, though valiant and numerous, found themselves outflanked and overwhelmed, their retreat inevitable. As the dust of battle settled, the significance of the victory at Trebia began to resonate. Lucius stood amidst the aftermath, breathless and bloodied, conscious of having been a part of a pivotal moment. Word carried quickly through the ranks of their triumph, and a newfound confidence gripped their hearts. They had struck a formidable blow against the mighty Republic and carved a path deeper into fate's design. Buoyed by triumph, the army regrouped, ready to carry forward the momentum of their victory. Lucius knew that greater challenges lay ahead, yet within each soldier burned the fire of defiance. They were not mere invaders. They were harbingers of a Carthaginian resurgence, determined to see Hannibal's vision realized under the sky of an eternally remembered Rome. In the aftermath of victory at Trebia, a subtle tension lingered in the air. The triumph was undeniable, and yet Lucius sensed in the steady preparations that Hannibal understood well the nature of war. Today's success was merely a foothold on a far more treacherous path. As winter's cloak settled over the land, the army set itself to wait, fortifying their resolve amidst the cold grip of Italic lands. Lucius spent much of his time alongside his fellow soldiers, tending to the mundane tasks that accompanied such a pause between battles. Weapons were sharpened with methodical precision, armor mended, and provisions meticulously portioned to sustain them through the harsh season. Camaraderie flourished, the bonds between men hardened in hardship. During those cold months, word arrived of Rome's internal tumult. Hannibal's campaign had sent ripples through the Republic as uncertainty and discontent festered within its heart. Yet it was still undoubtedly a formidable adversary that lay ahead. As the days inched slowly towards spring, a new energy stirred within the camp. From the whispers and directives came news of their impending advance, the vital opportunity to strike again at the heart of Roman might. Lucius watched as Hannibal held council with his trusted lieutenants, drawing lines and plans upon the frozen earth, forging a vision of what lay ahead. It was then that Hannibal shared his intent. The army would continue into Etruria, aiming to lure the Romans to a place of his choosing for another decisive engagement. The tension charged the air as preparations quickened. The soldiers were to resume their audacious campaign. The army of Carthage moved swiftly and with purpose when the first thaw heralded the approach of spring. Their march southward was defined by both strategy and foresight, avoiding heavily fortified towns that might slow their progress. Along the way, they encountered allies long suppressed under Roman yoke, those eager to shake free and support Hannibal's banner of resistance. Days and nights melted into each other as the march carried them into the vibrant heart of Etruria. Fields of green and gold unfurled like a tapestry of bounty, but Lucius knew well that the beauty belied the fierce encounter imminent upon them. Their leader sought to pit the indomitable courage of men against not just Roman strength, but Roman strategy. Their steps led them eventually to Lake Trasimine's shimmering waters. Here, Hannibal's cunning unfolded. Scouts returned with reports that a Roman army, spearheaded by Consul Gaius Flaminius, shadowed their movement. In the landscape of hills and lakeside, Hannibal saw the perfect snare. Before first light, as mists curled off the lake, the Carthaginians prepared to spring their trap. Hidden among the rolling slopes that flanked the lake's edge, Hannibal's forces lay in wait. Foot soldiers poised, cavalry primed, and the elephants, those great war beasts, steely and silent. Lucius felt his breath quicken, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of anticipation. In nature's theatre they were ready to take the stage. At the break of dawn, as the unaware Romans marched into the passage bordered by the lake and hills, Carthage struck. Lucius watched with a mix of awe and resolve as chaos erupted along the Roman column. The Roman position unraveled like a tightly wound spool in the clutches of Hannibal's stratagem. Lucius fought fiercely amid the melee, the roar of battle a living entity around him. In the confusion, the precision of Carthaginian movements became evident as they pressed hard, driving panic through Roman ranks. The lake's stillness belied the tumult of splashing escapes and desperate cries that echoed as Flaminius's forces, trapped, found themselves vanquished between water and warrior. The victory was absolute. Lucius, standing atop the peaceful rise now dotted with remnants of conflict, looked over Lake Trasimene, aware of the magnitude of what they had achieved. Carthage had not merely won a battle, they had decimated one of Rome's armies and cemented their place in the annals of military genius. Hannibal's reputation as a tactician surged following Trasimene, the ripples of his victories spreading across the Italian peninsula. And with every victory, Lucius realized they were writing a definitive chapter of courage against dominion, a tale to echo through time's unyielding corridors. The road ahead promised more challenges, but with each battle they stepped deeper into history's embrace. After the resounding triumph at Lake Trasimene, the Carthaginian army, along with Lucius in its ranks, basked briefly in the afterglow of their victory. Yet even as they celebrated, their minds began to stir with thoughts of the future. The weight of their success brought with it new responsibilities and new challenges as the reality of an ever-vigilant Rome loomed large in the distance. Lucius found himself in awe of Hannibal's astute leadership. The general wasted no time resting on his laurels. Instead, he seized the momentum, aware that the Romans, though battered and beleaguered, would respond with characteristic resilience. Rome was already marshalling its considerable resources to prevent further Carthaginian advances. As they moved southward, the countryside through which they traveled bore signs of Roman influence. Yet the morale within the Carthaginian ranks was buoyant. Hannibal's victories had stoked the fires of rebellion among some of Rome's erstwhile allies, further extending their influence. However, the grim realities of the campaign, hunger, exhaustion, and unfamiliar terrain, were unrelenting. The army marched through the fertile lands,
foraging when possible, living off the land to sustain their journey deeper into Italian territory. Lucius remained vigilant, acutely aware that war tested a soldier's spirit as much as his strength. Hannibal soon set his sights on a new, audacious strategy. He turned his attention to Cannae, where rich farmlands stretched across the Apulian plain. Their march brought them closer to this critical region, a symbolic and strategic target sure to provoke the Romans into action. The rumors proved true. Another Roman army gathered, determined to protect Rome's position in the south. Commanded by the consuls Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus, the Romans aimed to confront Hannibal's army in a decisive encounter. The days leading to the engagement were filled with logistical maneuvers. The Carthaginian forces made camp near Cannae, strategically positioning themselves as Hannibal prepared to once again test his mettle against the ingenuity and resilience of Roman power. Tensions ran high, whisperings of impending battle threading through the camp like an electric current. Then came the morning of the awaited confrontation, 216 BC, a day that would find its place in history. The sky was a clear expanse of blue against which the swelling anticipation of battle unfurled. The air buzzed with expectation as lines were drawn and formations took shape. Lucius was positioned with the infantry at the center, amidst men whose skills had been honed by the crucible of past battles. The signal for battle rang out as the armies closed in. Dust rose from the pounding hooves and marching feet, a cloud of history preparing to engulf the plains of Cannae. In a masterful display, Hannibal deployed his troops in a crescent formation, the center softly yielding while the wings held firm. The Romans charged, confident in their superior numbers, driving against the center with formidable force. Lucius stood firm with his compatriots, enduring the pressure, the bellow of war and clashing of arms resonating with a primal urgency. As the Roman forces poured into the trap, the Carthaginian wings swept forward, enveloping and encircling like the closing pages of a dark epic. The ensuing combat became one of the ancient, world's most epoch-defining engagements. Caught in the encircling grasp of Hannibal's genius, the Roman legions were driven into disarray. They found themselves hemmed on all sides, their disciplined ranks dissolved into a maelstrom. Lucius fought amidst the chaos, battling step by step as the Carthaginian forces executed their lethal maneuver. The resonance of victory roared around him, transforming desperation into triumph. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its light casting a golden pall over the battlefield, the magnitude of what they had accomplished crystallized. Cannae was more than a victory. It was a legendary triumph, a testament to the art of war and the indomitable spirit of Hannibal's Carthaginian host. As the exhausted and bloodied army stood victorious, Lucius felt the world shift beneath him, the outcome marking a profound chapter in the chronicles of human warfare. Yet, even amid triumph, Lucius understood that the road ahead promised no certainty. Their path extended further into the landscape of history, and with each step forward, the stakes grew only higher. The legend of Cannae would endure, but the demands of their campaign were unyielding, and Lucius knew they must press on, carrying the legacy of their harvest of victory into the heart of Rome. The aftermath of Cannae was a maelstrom of contemplation and reality. Despite the resounding victory, Lucius, along with the rest of Hannibal's army, understood that their greatest challenge lay not in the battles they had won, but in the uncertain path that lay ahead. Rome, though bloodied, was unbroken. The resilience of the Great Republic was a testament to its deep roots and far-reaching influence. As the enormity of their triumph settled like dust over the battlefield, Hannibal convened with his commanders. Their discussions carried through the camp, reaching the ears of every weary soldier. Decisions now had a greater weight. With Cannae, they had set in motion a storm that would either extinguish the Republic or force an unyielding empire into submission, a feat that required not only victory, but strategic ingenuity. Lucius felt the weight of the landscape around him, the vast open fields, the endless skyward stretch of Italy, both invigorating and daunting. They had demonstrated that Rome was not invincible, yet in the heart of every soldier rested the understanding that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no retreat. In the weeks that followed, Hannibal relied on his mastery of diplomacy as much as his prowess on the battlefield. Word of their victory spread across the Italian peninsula, kindling revolt among some of Rome's subjugated allies. Cities in Campania and other regions wavered in their allegiance, tempted by the possibility of casting off Roman shackles. However, Lucius was all too aware of the challenges that threatened to undermine even the greatest efforts. The terrain, so unfamiliar and far from Carthaginian shores, posed difficulties in sustaining a prolonged campaign. Moreover, diplomatic overtures failed to significantly sway major allies from throwing in their lot with the Carthaginians, hesitance born from centuries of Rome's dominance. The Roman Senate, though reeling, orchestrated a strategic defensive that could not be underestimated. They forbade large-scale engagements with Hannibal's forces, instead focusing on fortifying cities and preventing him from gaining a stronghold. This cautious yet calculated approach, later known as the Fabian strategy, sought to erode Hannibal's influence through attrition, refusing him the crushing blow that might otherwise have delivered Rome into his hands. Amid this stalemate, Lucius found his resolve and that of his comrades tested by a campaign that transformed from blazing battles to prolonged tension. Their days blended into each other, each dawn a continuation of their calculated watch over Rome's movements. The shadow of doubt sometimes flickered among the troops as they contended with the relentless march of time and the fickle nature of alliances. Yet Hannibal's resolve was unwavering. He navigated these challenges with an unshakable belief in their cause, the heart of Carthage beating with a defiant rhythm. Lucius observed as Hannibal made camp near Capua, leveraging its resources to entrench his forces for the months to come. Their time at Capua offered a reprieve from ceaseless marching and engagement. Here, Lucius and his peers found moments of solace amidst the inhabitants who greeted them with cautious welcome, their hope buoyed by the prospect of freedom from Roman hegemony. As a semblance of routine settled over the Carthaginian camp, Lucius often found himself wandering the outskirts, reflecting on their journey. He marveled at the quiet resilience in
his comrades, forged through shared struggle and the will of a leader whose legendary campaign had already shaped the contours of history. Though cannons of doubt echoed across Hannibal's expansive ambitions, Lucius and his fellows were bound by the purpose they carried. The lure of victory sang to them with the promise of glory and the possibility of rewriting the world's order. And so they bided their time, knowing that even the greatest empires start with steady, deliberate steps. The days transformed into weeks and then months, their vigil unrelenting. As Lucius looked to the horizon, he felt the immense weight of history pressing down upon them. The path they traversed would not be determined by the whims of fate, but by their unwavering spirit and Hannibal's undying vision to stand fearless against the Roman heart. Months slipped quietly past, with each passing day a meditation in patience and endurance. As winter relinquished its grip, giving way to the promise of spring in the Italian countryside, the stalemate wore heavily on Lucius and his comrades. The promise of swift victory that had seemed so tangible after Cannae felt increasingly elusive. Hannibal, ever the consummate strategist, was acutely aware that the Carthaginian grip on Italy needed reinforcement. His victories, though significant, were like dramatic strokes across a vast canvas, requiring deeper, sustained support to effect lasting change.
This landscape of possibility was treacherous, fraught with the inherent challenges of sustaining an army far from home. Amidst the political maneuvering and delicate task of swaying allegiances, Lucius found solace in the disciplined routine that defined their days. The army remained ever vigilant, maintaining a presence in southern Italy, with watchful eyes towards Rome. This sense of anticipation was a constant hum beneath the veneer of daily life, a reminder that they were still on the precipice of history, waiting for the right moment to once again strike at the Roman heart. However, the bounty of Capua, which had once seemed a welcome haven, began to weave its own form of insidious challenge. The city, with its luxurious opulence and an abundance of comforts, posed an unexpected trap, one of complacency. The allure of its pleasures, the ease of extended rest, threatened to dull the sharp edge of the battle-hardened army. Lucius sensed this shift, observing as some soldiers gave in to the seductive lull of life in Capua, their discipline waning. It was a slow and subtle erosion, as dangerous as any Roman blade. It was understood among the upper echelons of Hannibal's comrades that while they must maintain their position, they could not become tethered to immobility. In response, measures were taken to reignite the Carthaginian fervour. Drills were intensified, forays into surrounding territories increased, and Hannibal rallied his men, reminding them of their purpose. His presence, indomitable and inspiring, was a catalyst, revitalizing their spirits and refocusing their mission. Still, the Roman response continued to evolve. The Roman Senate, under the prudent consideration of Fabius Maximus and his cohorts, pursued the policy of attrition with a steady hand. A more balanced, cautious army was slowly forming, restructuring and reinforcing itself under skilled generals who exercised patience and perseverance over rash confrontation. As the year wore on, Hannibal sought to expand his theatre of operations, hopeful that a decisive blow would spark the wider rebellion he aimed for. Lucius and his unit were dispatched on expeditions farther afield, engaging smaller Roman forces, frustrating their efforts to disrupt Hannibal's influence. These excursions, though minor in the realm of grand battles, presented opportunities for Lucius to witness firsthand the complex web of loyalty and fear that blanketed Italy. In towns and villages, amid the watchful eyes of Rome, seeds of dissent swayed like wheat against the wind, occasional whispers, the guarded exchange of goods. But allegiance to the Roman eagle remained potent, and Hannibal needed more than whispers to turn the tide. The spring gave way to summer, and new plans began to unfurl. Hannibal consolidated his position, aware that the extended campaign stretched the limits of their supplies and manpower. Lucius understood the severity of their logistics as winter approached again. The need to both sustain and protect what they had gained was paramount. Despite the quiet interlude of action, Lucius carried with him the weight of Cannae's memory, a reminder that history was their companion, demanding vigilance with every rising sun. For now, Rome stood firm, a giant unyielding to Hannibal's undeniable prowess. Yet, beneath the surface, something had changed. The shifting sands of power whispered of a possible future where Rome's firmament could still be challenged, and it was this promise that continued to guide the steps of Lucius and his fellow soldiers toward destiny's unfurling canvas. As autumn's rich hues blanketed the Italian landscape, the air around the Carthaginian camp felt charged with anticipation. Despite the passage of time, the promise of Rome's eventual downfall continued to echo in Lucius's heart. The army had endured much, navigating the instabilities of prolonged warfare with grit and determination. Yet, the looming spectre of supply shortages began to tighten its grip, and the strategic patience of Hannibal was being sorely tested. Hannibal remained a masterful leader, undaunted by setbacks. His vision was one of endurance, perseverance through the undulating tides of war, and he knew that to bolster their efforts, they needed a decisive move, one that could reignite the flames of rebellion among Rome's satellite states. In the waning months of 215 BC, an opportunity arose with the promise of alliance. The city of Tarentum had whispered intrigues of defection, a potential boon that could tip the scales against Rome. While the larger region remained largely loyal to the Republic, there existed pockets of discontent among the populace, dissatisfaction simmering quietly beneath the surface. Hannibal, ever the tactician, dispatched envoys to Tarentum seeking to cement this alliance. Though complexities and caution ruled these negotiations, they signified a critical front in the ongoing campaign. Lucius, who was not directly involved, nevertheless felt the ripple of hope amongst the rank and file, a reminder of the strategic breadth Hannibal envisioned. Amid these diplomatic efforts, Hannibal knew his army could not remain static, and he orchestrated further maneuvers designed to disrupt the Roman strategic hold. Skirmishes erupted in the surrounding territories, designed to draw Roman attentions and resources. Lucius participated in these, witnessing the tug-of-war of tactical engagements that painted the land in unpredictability. In one such engagement near Herdonia, Lucius and his comrades faced a Roman contingent tasked with cutting supply lines. It was an intense affair, one that chaotically unfolded in a maze of narrow passes and rugged terrain well known to the Carthaginian scouts. Lucius fought with his usual zeal, acutely aware of the stakes entwined in each clash. Victory was theirs once more, adding to the strategic disruptions Hannibal championed. Even amid successes, Lucius recognized the impossible demands placed upon their leader. They maneuvered through Italy like actors on a stage, the scenes shifting but never concluding in the decisive blow that would bring their campaign to a resounding close. Hannibal's genius lay in exhausting Rome's resolve, in unraveling the bindings of its far-stretched influence, but such sustenance was ephemeral without sustained support. As winter began to unfurl its cold embrace, the broader strategic picture revealed fractures. Despite earnest efforts, Tarentum's full alliance was hindered by internal pressures and Roman influence. Hannibal's armies, though victorious in battle, were stretched thinly across the map, where distance and time dulled the edge of even the most sharpened sword. Lucius joined his brethren around the fires at night, reflecting on the path they had charted together. The stories swapped by firelight focused on survival, on the price paid by soldiers who had dared to defy an empire. To Lucius, they were no longer just warriors. They were witnesses to a theatre of ambition, participants in a dance destined to reshape the world. In his heart, Lucius held the simple truth that they could not relent. With each new sunrise over Italy's diverse canvases, from the shores of Capua to the peaks glimpsed in distant skies, the resolve to carry Hannibal's banner forward burned brightly. The flame of ambition had forges cast in no ordinary crucible, but shaped by history's demand, and Lucius would step bravely onward, determined that the echoing cry of Carthage not fall to silence. Even as challenge beset them, Lucius knew each whisper of potential alliance. Each deft tactical strike carried them forward toward the inevitable reconciliation of hope and reality. A destiny painted not just by the color of conflict, but by the tenacity of their resolute journey against Rome's towering shadow. The chill of winter settled over the Italian peninsula like a shroud, and the landscape bore the muted tones of a season in waiting. For Lucius and the soldiers of Carthage, it was a time of introspection amid the rigor of continued vigilance. While the fires of past victories sparked warmth amidst the cold, the challenges ahead cast long shadows on their journey. By 214 BC, the shifting dynamics of Hannibal's campaign
manifested in both strategic setbacks and cautious optimism. The allure of securing Tarentum had not faded, yet it had become clear that the path to its allegiance was fraught with complication. Hannibal adapted as ever, casting his net wider in search of opportunity and support. He next set his gaze upon Salapia, a settlement whose allegiances, wavering between Rome and Carthage, embodied the overreaching struggle within the Italian theatre. Its strategic value lay not just in resources, but as a potential opening to further unravel the web of Roman alliances. Lucius, now seasoned by years in the field, listened intently as scouts brought news of their allies' dispositions and the strengths of Rome's garrisons. It was a dangerous game of balancing diplomacy with the ever-present readiness for conflict, a game that Hannibal played with unmatched acumen. Amid these tensions, Hannibal orchestrated a daring series of movements designed to destabilize Roman operations in the region. The Carthaginian army took advantage of winter's lull to maneuver silently into positions that would enable them to strike decisively come spring. Lucius and his fellow soldiers, though wary and weathered, moved with a practiced determination, their faith placed squarely in Hannibal's leadership. At dawn, with the first buds of spring heralding a renewal of campaigns, the soldiers assembled in disciplined formations outside Salapia, a testament to their enduring resolve. The plan was one of calculated audacity, utilizing disinformation and strategic feints to lure Roman defenders into an untenable position. The operation unfolded with Hannibal's characteristic deftness, catching the Romans off guard as they attempted to hold their ground against the Carthaginian advance. Lucius fought alongside his comrades, the clash of steel and cries of battle, a familiar composition that filled the air with an urgency born of purpose. Their efforts bore fruit. Salapia, mesmerized by the display of Carthaginian prowess and the mounting pressure of rebellion against Roman oversight, delivered a partial allegiance to Hannibal's forces. Although not the complete victory they sought, it was a testament to the shifting allegiances throughout the region, a spark of possibility amid the greater conflict. Despite these gains, the broader war remained grueling. Reinforcements from Carthage were sparse, constrained by distant fronts and naval engagements. The army had grown adept at drawing support from the territories they marched through, requiring keen diplomacy and a delicate negotiation of local politics. As the seasons turned once more, Rome continued its defensive tactics, seeking to mitigate the Carthaginian threat through the attrition of resources and the steadfast defense of pivotal strongholds. Hannibal countered with relentless innovation, employing guerrilla tactics and exploiting his deep knowledge of the Italian landscape to maintain Carthage's tenuous position. Lucius, reflective in these moments of relative calm, embraced the soldier's role as both witness and participant in this colossal confrontation. Time's unyielding march made immortal the lessons gleaned from each engagement, every march not just an advance, but a testament to resilience's bloom against adversity's storm. Through it all, the bond among the soldiers strengthened with each trial, underpinned by the shared experience of waging a campaign underfoot of an empire's monumental reach. They were etched, not just in the language of war, but as enduring symbols of Hannibal's audacious vision, the hand drawn against the indomitable sway of Rome, a thread poised on the loom of history's great tapestry. In the quiet that followed Salapia's conquest and the anticipation of future endeavors, Lucius felt the powerful juxtaposition of ephemeral victories and enduring dreams. Though the road ahead bore the promise of struggle, it was the spirit of Carthage, indomitable and enduring, that carried them forward into the annals yet to be written. As the sun rose over the fields of Italy in 213 BC, the Carthaginian army continued its relentless drive, each step a testament to their enduring pursuit of Hannibal's bold vision. With each passing season, they had learned to survive on the breadth of their endurance and the tactical brilliance of their leader. The embers of hope flickered, fueling their march through the complex battleground of alliances and opposition. The victories they had achieved hung like battle honors above them. However, the challenge of maintaining momentum grew ever more demanding. Rome, with its vast resources, adapted its strategies, and Lucius knew that every skirmish, every encounter, was a piece of a larger puzzle, one that often held the fate of their campaign in balance. During these times, Lucius found himself reflecting on their journey, the moments etched into his memory like indelible ink. Among the shifting tides of war, Tarentum still lingered as a prize worthy of pursuit. Its allure continued to tempt Hannibal, offering the crucial gateway to the further support and resources they so desperately needed. Amid refugees, messengers, and scouts, whispers of a burgeoning opportunity reached Hannibal's ears. Within Tarentum, dissatisfaction with Roman rule festered. Covert sympathies for Hannibal's cause and seeds of resistance took root in crevices unseen by Rome's watchful eye. Seizing upon this delicate situation, Hannibal devised an audacious plan. He coordinated a covert night operation intended to infiltrate Tarentum. Carthaginian agents, brave and cunning, were dispatched ahead to pave the way, sowing seeds of revolt within the city's walls. Simultaneously, the encamped army prepared to move with disciplined stealth, ready to strike at the opportune moment. Lucius and his battle-hardened comrades were no strangers to such daring endeavors. Each soldier carried with him the legacy of past victories and the burden of continued expectation. Their hearts embraced the possibility that this could be the pivotal moment they awaited. Under cover of darkness, whispered orders initiated the operation. Lucius moved with his unit, every step calculated, every heartbeat aligned with the night's rhythm. Shadows were their allies, cloaking their approach as the outlines of Tarentum loomed closer, its stone walls silent sentinels against the night sky. Inside the city, Hannibal's agents enacted their carefully laid plans. Through allies and courtyards, their whispers of rebellion crescendoed into coordinated action. Gates were unbarred, Roman patrols confused and disrupted by shifting allegiances. As the signs unfolded, the Carthaginian forces surged forward, scaling the walls with disciplined precision, the symphony of their advance interwoven with the chaos that erupted within. Lucius felt the weight of history in those moments, the palpable tension between fear and triumph. They surged through the city's streets, driving opposition before them, Carthage's banner unfurling against the backdrop of a starlit sky. The overcoming of Tarentum was swift and decisive, a testament to Hannibal's unwavering resolve. As dawn broke over the city, its citizens were awakened to a new reality. Tarentum shifted from a Roman stronghold to a symbol of Carthaginian influence and strategy, a powerful beacon for others who sought liberation from Rome's grasp. Celebration flickered briefly in the days that followed, accompanied by strategic realignments as Hannibal consolidated his new position. For Lucius, the capture of Tarentum was a reaffirmation of faith in their cause and a reminder of the unpredictable tides of war where victory could be both profound and precarious. Yet even amidst triumph, the spectre of Roman retaliation loomed ever near. Rome would undoubtedly respond with vigor, intent on reclaiming its loss and reasserting its dominance in the fractured region. Lucius realized that the campaign, much like the city's capture, involved delicate precision. The balance of victory and vigilance teetered on the knife's edge. For now, the strength of Carthage endured, fortified not only by the gain of territory, but by the unwavering spirit of its soldiers, hearts bound by a shared journey, firmly poised against the relentless will of an empire, marching ever onward toward the promise of a new dawn. The capture of Tarentum
reverberated throughout the Italian peninsula, a symbolic victory that invigorated the Carthaginian ranks and sent ripples of concern through the heart of Rome. Yet Lucius understood that their journey was far from over. The path ahead bristled with new challenges, a complex web spun by the ever-adaptable Roman opposition. Hannibal, emboldened by this success, concentrated on solidifying his hold over the region. The capture had yielded not only strategic positioning, but access to desperately needed resources and support. Tarentum, with its harbours and fertile lands, was a jewel in the contested landscape of Italy, offering a newfound base from which to stage further operations. Yet Hannibal was acutely aware of the need to maintain momentum. The Romans, though stunned by the setback, rallied quickly. They marshalled their forces to strike not directly at Tarentum, but at the surrounding allies and territories that were now vulnerable to pressure and persuasion. The Roman Senate, resolved to quash this Carthaginian foothold, turned its formidable resources towards this goal. It was during these tense times that Hannibal decided to send his brother Mago back to Carthage to seek reinforcements. The delicate balance in Italy required more troops than the current campaign could muster, a call to arms for the resources of home. Lucius watched as Mago departed, carrying with him the hopes of an army that knew victory needed the reinforcement of strength from afar. With winter approaching, Hannibal moved quickly. He orchestrated a series of maneuvers designed to further destabilize Roman plans. Lucius found himself in the thick of these strategies, partaking in several engagements aimed at disrupting supply lines and sowing confusion within the Roman ranks. One significant operation took place near the city of Herdonia. Here, the Carthaginians engaged in a feigned retreat, drawing the Roman legions into unfavorable terrain. As the fog of early morning rolled over the battlefield, Lucius and his fellow soldiers lay in ambush, ready to spring the trap that had been so carefully crafted. The clash that followed tested every lesson learned on Italy's battlefields. Hannibal's warriors surged into action, delivering a devastating blow to the Roman forces, cutting them down with coordinated precision. The victory at Herdonia bolstered their position, and the defeated Roman forces retreated, regrouping to plan further resistance. In the aftermath, Lucius sat by the fireside, reflecting on the delicate dance of war. He knew their gains were a masterstroke in Hannibal's expansive vision, yet each victory carried the weight of Rome's inevitable response. The Carthaginian campaign was a tale of deft maneuvering, a chess game played on the vast board of Italy, where every move mattered profoundly. Winter settled across the lands, with its chill bringing a temporary reprieve in the frenetic pace of summer campaigns. As the days grew shorter, Lucius and his comrades focused on fortifying their positions, aware that the coming months would test not only their resolve, but their endurance against the cold and the hunger that accompanied it. In the quiet of those winter nights, Lucius found moments of introspection, his mind wandering through thoughts of home and future. The firelight danced upon faces that bore the scars of battle and the stories of unyielding resistance. Each man was a part of the extraordinary tapestry spun from their collective struggle, woven with courage amidst adversity. The campaign in Italy was far from over, and Lucius knew that the promise of spring would bring with it new battles, new chapters in the saga that was their march toward destiny. Despite the uncertainty, the spirit of Carthage glowed brightly in the hearts of its soldiers, a beacon guiding them through the dark promises of winter, poised for the resurgence that awaited them beyond. As the icy grip of winter released its hold, the first whispers of spring carried with them a renewed sense of urgency and promise. The year 212 BC dawned with an air charged by past victories and the uncertain future. For Lucius and the Carthaginian army, it was a time of transition, where the line between hope and hardship blurred into the rhythm of a relentless campaign. The capture of Tarentum and the victory at Herdonia had been significant milestones, but spring brought with it the knowledge that the Roman forces, though battered, were unyielding. Rome's capacity to absorb setbacks and rebound with determination was legendary, a fact that Hannibal, strategic genius that he was, never underestimated. In the refreshing breath of the new season, Hannibal formulated plans to further capitalize on their successes by seeking to expand Carthage's influence in Italy. The strategy was a multifaceted endeavor, targeting the sinews of Roman support and gaining the allegiance of wavering city-states, a complex dance of diplomacy and military prowess. As the campaign resumed, Lucius and the soldiers embarked on a march toward the city of Capua, a crucial ally that had realigned with Carthage. The city's strategic location and resources were indispensable to sustaining their presence in Italy, providing a veritable bastion for further operations. The Romans, however, had not been idle. Under the command of newly appointed consuls, they mounted a concerted effort to reclaim lost ground and stem Hannibal's advances. One of their targets was Capua, a city whose allegiance with Carthage represented a thorn in Rome's side. Determined to fortify Capua against the growing Roman threat, Hannibal marched into the area with resolve, his mind a tapestry of strategies. Their goal was to defend Capua's splendor while ensuring their enemies' attempts to sever ties between allies remained thwarted. The battle for Capua unfolded amid this tense struggle for control and influence. Lucius, ever at the forefront of these pivotal endeavors, participated in a series of skirmishes that showcased the determination and prowess of Hannibal's forces. The battles were fierce, marked by cunning ambushes and pitched engagements, weaving together the threads of a narrative that would endure through the ages. Despite their efforts, the siege of Capua proved to be a monumental challenge. Rome's iron will was exemplified by the steadily tightening blockade they imposed, intending to starve the city into submission. In a bold move, Hannibal sought to alleviate the pressure on Capua by striking directly at the heart of Rome itself. The mere announcement of such an audacious plan breathed new life into the weary ranks. While it was not intended to capture the city, the strategic feint aimed to draw Roman forces away from Capua and relieve the siege. Lucius could feel the palpable tension as they advanced towards Rome. The declaration was as much psychological as it was tactical, intended to project Carthage's resolve on the vast stage of history. As they approached Rome, the significance of the moment was not lost on Lucius. The sight of Rome's distant walls, imposing and eternal, was a testament to the grave undertaking of their campaign. And although the attack was a feint rather than a full assault, it successfully diverted Roman attentions as expected. Hannibal's gamble worked, drawing forces away and allowing Capua a reprieve, a testament to Carthage's ability to maneuver Rome into a reactionary stance. Yet Lucius understood that such victories were transient in the grand dance between empires. With summer's sun overhead, the army withdrew from the vicinity of Rome, returning to consolidate their gains in southern Italy. Lucius and his companions stood stronger for the trials, their spirits steeled by the realization that their daring had etched them into the annals of legend. Though Rome remained undefeated, the campaign's echoes were destined to resonate through time. Carthage's defiance had carved a legacy of courage and resilience, embodied in the soldiers who dared to dream of toppling the giants that stood before them. As the seasons once again shifted, Lucius embraced the uncertainty of future battles with unwavering resolve. They had not just waged war, they had crafted a tale of indomitable will, a saga to spur the songs and histories told long after their march had ended. With the embers of their journey still warm, and the knowledge that they fought not just for land, but for an enduring legacy, Lucius and his brethren rode onward into the chronicles of history, aware that their story,
like the stars above, would continue to shine through history's vast expanse. In a time long past, when the air was heavy with the anticipation of fate, and the seas whispered tales of old, there lived a young warrior named Theron. Imagine, if you will, a youth of 19 summers, eyes as deep and reflective as the Aegean Sea itself. He was an Athenian, born under the sun-drenched columns of the city, where the air was alive with philosophical debates and the promise of democracy. Theron had not always been a warrior, but circumstances beyond mortal control had guided his hand to the grip of a spear. His life, which had started with moments of unblemished joy beneath the olive trees at his family estate, had warped with the winds of war. The heralds of chaos announced themselves on a cloudless morning when the Persian king Darius sent his mighty armada to the shores of Hellas, seeking to subdue the free people within her embrace. On that day, Theron's destiny turned its gaze to the stark landscape of history. His family, proud stewards of their land, were one of the many who did not survive the Persian onslaught. News came hastily, delivered by a bloodied rider, earth clinging to his cloak in testament to the distance travelled. The visage of his home reduced to cinders haunted Theron's dreams, a nightly reminder that fate was a weaver as much inclined to tear as to mend. Left with neither root nor kin, he found his only solace in the city of Athens, standing steadfast against the might that sought to overwhelm it. And so, with the fervour of youth and the righteousness of a just cause as his companions, Theron joined the ranks of Athens' defenders. Days turned into weeks of ardent training as he learned the art of war alongside others driven by the same fire, their hearts synchronized by a mutual desire to protect their homeland. The owl of Athena watched over them, whispering wisdom into the winds that rustled through the poplars where they drilled. Each morning, as the first rays of Helios spilled over the horizon, Theron stood amongst his peers on the dirt-stained exercise grounds, disciplined by the rhythmic commands of their captains. The metallic symphony of swords unsheathed and the harmonious thud of shields striking in unison became the anthem of their resistance. His body, once lean and untested, became the vessel through which courage flowed, fortified by sweat and tempered by discipline. Yet, amidst these preparations, Theron found fragments of peace in the act of remembering, of dreaming of what once was. He would sit at twilight beneath the shadow of the Parthenon, its marbled beauty a silent testament to the resilience of his people. With each delicate brushstroke of dusk across the sky, he would recount tales of his childhood. The memory of his mother's laughter as it echoed off the garden walls, his father's gentle but firm hand guiding his first youthful steps, were as alive in his heart as the pulsing river beyond the city gates. Life in Athens, during these trepidatious times, was a delicate balancing act perched precariously between hope and despair. Those who took arms alongside Theron did so driven by a cause larger than themselves, a tapestry of freedom intricately woven with threads of unity and determination. For every spear honed,
There was a story of vengeance or redemption, of a life lost too soon or one reclaimed from the jaws of conquest. As the seasons unrolled their carpets of green and gold, whispering the secrets of the world to those willing to listen, the call to arms grew ever louder. Intelligence of Persian movements moved like shadows under the light of his city's strategic minds, and with each passing night, Theron felt the whisper of destiny urging him onward, to stand with his fellow warriors at Marathon, where legends were soon to be born. This was the tale of Theron, whose resolve became the forge where the future of Athens would be shaped, one breath at a time. As sleep lured him into its gentle embrace under the twilight canopy, he dreamt of a different tomorrow, one deeply etched with his own place in the annals of history. And thus began an epic journey set against the stage of the First Persian War, as dreams of valor rose with the promise of dawn. As the days of summer waltzed slowly to their end, carrying whispers of autumn on the cooling Mediterranean breezes, the city of Athens steeled itself for the battle ahead. Theron, now a seasoned soldier amidst the ranks of Athenian warriors, felt the heavy cloak of anticipation settle upon his shoulders. The sun hung low in the sky, its glow gilding the city in a farewell embrace, before the inevitable call of duty led the troops to Marathon. In the narrow streets of Athens, citizens mingled with warriors, their gazes filled both with worry and a fierce pride. It was here that Theron began to see the faces behind the stories, the cobbler who was also a father, the merchant whose laughter would ring out despite the looming threat of war. They all carried with them tales of love and loss, underlined by the resilient spirit that defined their great city. Theron found solace in this camaraderie, forming bonds with his fellow warriors, brothers forged not in blood, but in vision and resolve. Among them was Kairos, a towering figure with an infectious smile and a voice echoing the strength of thunder. He had been a shepherd before the shadows of Persia stretched across their lands, turning his shepherd's crook into a spear. Victor, another of Theron's companions, embodied the quiet intellect that Athens was famed for. Formerly a student of philosophy, he brought with him strategies woven with the threads of Socratic logic and determination, his mind as sharp as the spear at his side. Their company was a microcosm of Athens itself, a testament to the diverse strengths of individuals uniting under a common cause. Together they practiced through the chill of dawn, the clamour of their drilling a rhythmic cadence that echoed across the hills. Each lunge and synchronized movement was laced with the hope that their preparation would serve them in the hours of chaos to come. The eve of battle arrived sooner than any of them had anticipated. The plans were laid, and the generals spoke with a calm assurance that belied the gravity of their decisions. A fleet of Athenian ships was arranged to protect the city's coastline, but it was upon the field of Marathon that Theron and his fellow hoplites were destined to meet the Persian forces. On the morning of departure, Athens awoke under a sky tinged with the colours of dawn, a tapestry unfurling in hues of orange and gold, as if to embolden the spirits of those who would defend her. Theron awoke with a heart thundering within his chest. Every breath was filled with the crisp air of resolve, every heartbeat a reminder of what he fought for: justice, honor, and the memory of his family. They marched through the city's ancient gates with a silent dignity, flanked by mothers who held their children close, planting kisses of farewell upon weathered cheeks. The air was thick with the scent of incense and prayer, motes of hope drifting upward, destined to mingle with the divine. Along the dusty path to Marathon, conversations interwove, forming a tapestry of voices filled with tales of loved ones and dreams of peace. Theron seized these moments for reflection, his mind returning to his family. He imagined his mother's embrace, the warmth of her cheek upon his, the strong yet gentle guidance of his father's hand. They were with him, not as memories, but as intrinsic pieces of who he had become. The landscape itself seemed to shift as they approached the plain of Marathon. A vast expanse turned into the stage upon which history would unfold. Before them lay the Persian encampment, a sprawling testament to their might. Theron could see the glint of their armor, hear the distant murmur of 1,000 voices carried upon the wind. It was a sight both humbling and empowering, for in its shadowed expanse he found the clarity of purpose. As the sun reached its zenith, casting long shadows across the earth, the Athenian forces positioned themselves for battle. The ground thrummed beneath their feet, a steady pulse resonating with the courage within their hearts. It was within this moment, a breath held in the palm of time, that Theron understood the essence of war, the confrontation of sheer will interwoven with the silent dreams of peace. This was the path they had chosen, not just for victory, but for the chance to reclaim their history, an epic tale carved through struggle and sacrifice. Theron and his fellow warriors stood poised upon the precipice of legend, ready to meet their destiny with unwavering strength. With the call to arms echoing across the battlefield, the Athenian phalanx surged forward, led by spirits as undaunted as the immortals their myths revered, ready to etch their place into the annals of time with each step they took forward. The battlefield at Marathon was swathed in the early light of day, a silent testament to the calm before the storm. In this hallowed expanse, every rock and blade of grass bore witness to the assembly of two mighty forces, one vying to conquer, the other striving to preserve. The air weighed heavy with anticipation, thick with the promise of the clash to come. Theron stood amidst the ranks, his heart a drum that matched the steady rhythm of marching feet. He glanced to his left, where Kairos hefted his spear with casual ease, the flicker of a grin lighting up his stern features. To the right, Victor adjusted his helmet, eyes sharp with the keen edge of intellect, calculating probabilities, preparing for the uncertainty that lay ahead. The Athenian forces were outnumbered, their ranks a fraction of the Persian might. Yet, what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in determination, a force that intertwined with the very fabric of their being. It pulsed through them, uniting the farmers, artisans, and scholars who stood shoulder to shoulder, transformed into warriors by necessity and will. As they formed the phalanx, Theron marveled at its strength, a human shield interlocking in defiance of the adversary. The line was a living, breathing entity, a serpent of bronze and leather poised to strike forth with purpose. It was here, at this moment, that the camaraderie forged through weeks of training became a lifeline, binding them into an unbreakable front. Across the field, the Persian encampment stirred.
Banners of vibrant colours unfurled in the breeze, the insignias of kings and conquerors catching the light. Theron could see their infantry, archers, and the ominous silhouettes of cavalry beginning to move as a singular force, an indomitable tide preparing to crash against the valiant shores of Athenian resolve. The signal for battle resounded, a horn blown long and deep, its note connecting the heavens and the earth. With that, the battlefield erupted into movement. The disciplined ranks of Athenian hoplites surged forth, their voices lifted in a collective cry that carried their intention across the span of history. As the two forces converged, time fractured into a series of frozen moments etched into Theron's memory. The collision was a cacophony of sound and fury, the clang of metal on metal as spear met shield, the visceral thud as bodies collided with unrestrained force. Dust rose in swirling clouds beneath the feet of warriors, mingling with sweat and breath, enveloping the battle in its thick embrace. Theron found himself in the midst of this maelstrom, his spear steady in his grasp. He thrust forward with the precise movements drilled into him, each strike a testament to his training, each parry a testament to his will. Beside him, Kyros felled foes with an artful dance of violence, his strength and balance unmatched. Victor, with eyes blazing with strategic insight, anticipated movements, lending direction to their chaos. The field of Marathon became a tapestry of motion, where every gesture painted a picture of survival and defiance. Through the chaos, Theron's focus zeroed in on the faces of the Persian soldiers, men far from home, bound by loyalty or fear to their king's ambition. For a breath, he saw not enemies, but reflections of himself, bonds of duty wrapped in human form. As the hours stretched, the sun bore relentless witness, urging the battle to its crescendo. Here, upon this sacred ground, the impossible balance between despair and hope seesawed precariously. Yet, with each wave, the Persian forces charged. A counter-wave of Athenian bravery stood firm, bolstered by the fury of their cause. Amidst the whirlwind of combat, an opportunity revealed itself, a weakness in the Persian line, like a thread begging to be pulled. Theron saw it, and with a shared glance, he and his companions understood the silent command. Kyros shouted, his voice a signal to rally. "Now for Athens, for freedom!" They pressed forward, spurred by the opening, their advance a spear point into the heart of their enemy. Spear met shield with newfound vigor, the Athenian line bending but not breaking, a reflection of the indomitable spirit that thrummed within its core. Individual battles unfolded in rapid succession, swiftly shifting the momentum in favor of those defending their homeland. Through it all, moments of clarity emerged for Theron, a tapestry within the storm. The rush of adrenaline sharpened his senses, each heartbeat a reminder of what he sought to protect. In the faces of his comrades he saw what he fought for, the laughter of children, the wisdom of the elders, the sanctity of a day unmarked by persuasion or fear. With every step driving deeper into the Persian formation, the tide began to shift, an unyielding truth echoing in the hearts of the Athenian defenders. Marathon could not fall, not while hope burned brightly in their chests. As Theron lunged into the fray, striking with the precision born of necessity, he realized that this day would live on in history, painted by the valor of those who dared to defy an empire. The echoes of their cries mingled with the crashing waves, a symphony of past and present intertwining over the blood-soaked sands, where legends were born beneath Athenian and Persian skies. Amidst the tumultuous cacophony of the battle, as if suspended in time, Theron moved with a renewed sense of purpose. The sun, now high in the sky, cast its relentless gaze over the field of Marathon, illuminating the courage that surged through the ranks of Athenian warriors. Dust and sweat clung to him, yet his mind was as sharp as any blade upon the field. The momentum of the battle swayed like a wayward tide. Theron and his companions, an unyielding core within the Athenian line, pushed forward, yet the Persian forces were resilient, their pressure constant, their warriors seasoned by countless campaigns. Yet, within this theatre of war, something extraordinary unfolded. An echo started, a murmur amidst the tumult, a cry of valor that wove through the ranks like a thread of steel. It began with the Athenians who had not just joined to fight, but to protect their very way of life. The air seemed lighter suddenly, the oppressive weight briefly lifted by the unexpected, an ally, a stroke of fortune turning the tides of fate. Theron fought with tempered grace, his spear an extension of himself. With each thrust he recalled the strength of his father's lessons, the wisdom poised in his mother's words. He shifted, parried, and struck back with a precision honed in the crucible of necessity, every movement purposeful, every strike deliberate. Beyond the immediate chaos, Theron glimpsed a stirring across the Persian ranks. The morale that had once been their steadfast ally was wavering. At first it seemed implausible, impossible perhaps, but then it became unmistakably real. The Persian soldiers, perceptive and not without their own will to survive, began to glance toward the sea, toward the horizon, toward hope lost or salvaged, Theron could not say. "Hold the line!" Theron's voice cut through the clamor, a singular command binding his fellow warriors to the heart of their purpose. Standing resolutely beside him, Kairos and Victor responded with unwavering support, their presence as natural to him as the very breath in his lungs. Seconds stretched into minutes, and minutes into what felt like an eternity as individual battles unfolded like seeds in the wind. Each silhouette of conflict, a scene where strength, fear, and fate collided in rapid succession. Familiar faces from his ranks emerged, Athenian youths turned warriors, their expressions radiant with determination and resolve. As the front line of the phalanx drove deeper into the Persian formation, it became clear that the tide was turning. Where once there had been a surging wave of aggression, now the Persian lines showed wear, a faltering that hinted at the victory they sought. Through the roiling dust cloud that enveloped the combatants, the Athenian ranks pressed forth, capitalizing on the flickers of doubt flickering within the Persian gaze. Theron, amid the struggle for control, witnessed acts of bravery that transcended words, an archer standing firm despite waves of advancing swords, a wounded warrior refusing to falter, each act an anthem to the indomitable spirit of resistance. His own heart swelled with the realization that he was not just fighting for his city, but for the legacy of those who had come before him, and those who would inherit the realm made free by their deeds. Yet, amid this burgeoning hope, the battle's cost was carved into the land and its people, fellow soldiers who stood no more, echoes of laughter silenced by the finality of conflict. These were the sacrifices wrought upon the path to freedom, paved with the courage of those present and remembered by the shadows who bore witness on the winds. And then came a pivotal moment when the Persian resolve, once deemed invincible, began to truly fracture. A cry rose from the depths of the battlefield, carried across the shifting dust, a signal that turned the murmur to a roar. Athenian forces, surging forward with renewed fervour, pressed the advantage, and the Persian front lines, strained and weary, began to crumble. Speed and precision hailed from every direction as the balance tilted, the Persians driven not only by the sword, but by the dawning realization that their invincible invaders were mortal after all. With each Athenian step forward, the legends of unconquerable Persian might were rewritten in the sands of Marathon, bound by the ink of Athenian valor. In that defining embrace of time, where destiny's fingers poised to write history, Theron found himself standing upon the edge of victory. He met the eyes of his comrades, Kairos with his strength undeterred, Victor with intellect burning bright, and knew beyond the veil of battle they had turned the course of their city, their civilization. With a final, coordinated push, the battle ebbed from onslaught to retreat, the Persian forces breaking, scattering back toward the sea, retreating to their ships. The battlefield, scorched by sun and stained with blood, whispered its own lullaby, the gentle requiem of the fallen mingling with the breeze, carrying a tale born to endure through centuries. As the Athenian warriors gathered, some with smiles, others with tears, Theron stood at the heart of them all. For the first time since the shadows fell upon his life, he felt the warmth of their triumph, a bittersweet reminder that the cost of freedom was eternal vigilance. But with this victory, a bulwark against future tides had been forged. Together, in the aftermath of the storm, they gathered beneath the expanse of unburdened sky, ready to walk the path to Athens once more, as victors defined not merely by battle, but by an enduring spirit unbroken by the trials they faced. Days passed since the dust had settled on the battlefield at Marathon, and the echoes of victory continued to vibrate through the city of Athens like an anthem sung anew. The returning soldiers were greeted with the jubilant cries of a grateful populace whose freedom had been fiercely defended. The streets thrummed with a rhythm that spoke of resilience and celebration, a profound acknowledgement of peace hard-earned. Theron walked through these streets, his heart heavy with the memories of those who had fallen, yet buoyed by the living legacy they had secured. The sun shone above, casting its golden mantle upon the marbled edifices and marketplace stalls, bustling with life restored. Children danced along the edges of fountains, their laughter mingling with the murmur of conversation, painting a tapestry of life renewed. In those vibrant streets, Theron reunited with Kairos and Victor, their hands clasped in a triumvirate of survival and friendship. They spoke little of the battle, for words could not encompass the enormity of what they had been through together. Instead, they immersed themselves in the warmth of their city's embrace, living echoes of camaraderie born amid adversities. Yet, amidst this thriving city, Theron felt the gentle tug of solitude, drawing him once more to the memory of his family. To walk the paths once shared, he retreated to the sun-dappled groves on the outskirts of Athens, where he had often wandered as a child. Here, within the embrace of nature's sanctuary, he was free to remember, unfettered, enveloped by the fragrant memory of olive branches and their whispered secrets. Under the shadow of an aged olive tree, Theron reflected on the journey that had brought him from loss to this moment. Visions of his mother and father graced his mind, their presence warm and tangible, as if the very spirit of Athena herself granted him the solace of their voices. He closed his eyes, lips parting in a silent promise to continue the life they had begun, to honor them through the world he would help create. His thoughts turned to the city itself. Athens, bastion of knowledge, cradle of culture, a city reborn from the strife upon the plains of Marathon. The men of Athens were not just reclaimers of territory, but founders of a dream encased within marble and wisdom. Resolute, he perceived the weight of history upon his shoulders and the boundless possibilities of the future ahead. Days spilled into nights, and Theron, bound by duty and a newfound vision, found himself amidst the assembly of Athens's brightest minds. The debates within the ecclesia, an embodiment of democratic ideals, were fierce yet constructive. Decisions made within their halls would ripple outward, weaving the future of their city-state with threads of intellect and debate. The events at Marathon became a catalyst for change, invigorating the citizens of Athens with a newfound sense of identity. With victory came the necessity for preparedness, and an entire generation, steeled by experiences of their elders, now looked to the horizon not only in defense, but in aspiration to build an enduring peace. Theron stood as a devoted participant in these deliberations, his voice an echo of empathy and understanding, urging Athens towards balance and prosperity. He sought to honor the past, even as Athens moved boldly into the future. His experiences sharpened his resolve, making him a harbinger of practical wisdom shaped by what he had witnessed and what he had endured. By moonlight, stories blossomed at evening hearthsides, tales spun from fact and myth as parents regaled their children with the valor shown at Marathon. In the realm of memory, where legend and truth entwine into the fabric of heritage, Theron's name and that of his comrades was woven intricately, testaments to courage that would guide future generations. Victor, ever the scholar, documented their journey, his scrolls preserving each heartbeat of their struggle, each victory cry for those who would seek wisdom from the past. As the ink flowed from his quill, words etched into papyrus meant. To stand the test of time, he encapsulated not just the history of conflict, but the philosophy of humanity's resilience. Kairos, with his booming laugh and unyielding courage, infused the city with tales of strength and levity. Within the wrestling grounds, where olive oil glistened upon bronzed skin, the next wave of Athens' defenders trained beneath a sunburnt sky. It was here that the lore of Marathon transformed into guidance, a continuous reinvention of lessons born from the field of strife. In quiet moments of reflection, away from the fervor of speeches and training grounds, Theron returned to the murmuring waters of the Ilissos River. His shadow stretched alongside the water's edge as he watched its quiet journey toward the sea, realizing that, like the river, his own path was yet uncharted, an adventure unfurling under the watchful gaze of the future. Athens, vibrant and alive, thrived in the aftermath of Marathon's trial. Theron, a sentinel of memory and hope, stood resolute and inspired. With each passing dawn, he embraced the delicate dance between what had been and what could be, ever aware of the timeless refrain that, though battles may pass, the spirit of a people lives on, echoing through the ages with each heartbeat of freedom. As the seasons shifted and Athens stood poised on the brink of a new era, Theron found himself at the intersection of reflection and forward momentum, a juncture where history and potential converged. The city, thriving in its newfound serenity, continued to evolve, feeding on the vigors of its past victories to propel itself into an illuminated future. The symphony of daily life in Athens played on, harmonious in its contrasts. Markets bustled with the vibrance of trade, the air rich with the fragrance of spice and the lively exchanges of artisans whose crafts spoke of intricate beauty. The agora, Athens's beating heart, thrived with philosophers and orators, each rhetoric another brick cementing the foundation of ideas that would echo through time. Theron, amidst this ever-turning wheel of life, pursued a journey of introspection and purpose, seeking to harmonize the lessons of the past with the aspirations of tomorrow. He often walked the colonnades of the academy, a sanctuary of intellect where minds deliberated, forged in the crucible of inquiry and debate. Amidst these hallowed halls, the voice of Socratic wisdom resonated profoundly, each question a beacon guiding students toward understanding. Theron, older now and wiser beyond his tenure on Marathon's fields, endeavored to contribute as a mentor, sharing his experiences, yet remaining ever open to the new pupils whose imaginations danced with the light of discovery. The youth of Athens were a vibrant tapestry of potential, a generation inspired by tales of valor and philosophy, standing against the winds of a future shrouded yet promising. Theron saw in their eyes the same spark that had once driven him, a yearning to understand and shape the world around them. Among his pupils, one stood out, a spirited girl named Elara, whose curiosity burned fierce and unrelenting. She sought answers in the stars, her gaze often turned upwards, mapping celestial paths with an astuteness that belied her years. Her questions, poignant and adventurous, stirred school debates, kindling hope in levels both grounded and celestial. Seeing Elara's zeal, Theron nurtured her curiosity, guiding her toward the works of Pythagoras and Thales, their principles illuminating the mechanics of the heavens she adored. Under his mentorship, the possibilities within the sky became accessible, each constellation a stepping stone toward achieving her dreams. Meanwhile, the city continued its dance, weaving culture, democracy, and strategic alliances judiciously. Athens was a beacon among city-states, its centrality in matters of politics and art becoming as unshakable as marble foundations that sustained its architecture. Victory at Marathon had not only secured its people, but had cast a spell of peace on the whispering winds that swept across the Aegean. In this golden era, the arts flourished, a testament to the boundless creativity of her people. Sculptors captured the elegance of form, their chisels shaping stone into being, while playwrights wrote tragedies and comedies that spoke to the human condition. Music echoed through public spaces, lutes and lyres striking notes of both sorrow and exuberance, encompassing life's totality. To Theron, each string plucked and every word uttered was a sigh upon the expansive tapestry of Athenian culture, one he was honored to partake in, yet also eager to encourage in others. He found solace in knowing that the fight at Marathon had granted Athens the room to expand, to breathe, and to delve into its identity. Unimpeded. On afternoons, shaded by the gentle boughs of olive trees, Theron sat with his friends, Kairos and Victor, who had been more than comrades. They had become pillars in the architecture of survival and transformation. Their discussions, once steeped in the immediacy of threat, now orbited around the possibilities tied to legacy, held together by the string of their bonded friendship. Victor had seen to it that their history, their shared experiences, became the cornerstone of narrative. His manuscripts now guided new troops, inspired poets, and whispered wisdom into open ears. Kairos, ever the pragmatic optimist, instilled his strength and vigor into the next generation of athletes, inspiring their pursuits of greatness within stadiums, not battlefields. As twilight descended over Athens, weaving skies in hues of indigo and gold, the sun setting behind the hills beyond the Saronic Gulf, Theron often wandered to that sacred place where the weight of time felt lightest. Standing atop the Acropolis, he watched as the city unfolded below him. A city changed, yet ever the same, like the gentle flow of a river unchanged by the dynamics of its course. Underneath the tranquil gaze of the Parthenon, crafted to honor Athena, patroness of wisdom and warfare, Theron felt a profound kinship with history, an oath shared with those who had walked before him and those who would follow. It was a story not confined to the pages of Victor's scrolls, but one living within the heartbeats of its people. And thus, as he stood there, a sentinel of memories and dreams, Theron embraced the notion that while wars might define moments, peace shapes lifetimes. The tale of Marathon, inscribed in sweat and blood, would transcend his own, imbuing Athens with the strength and wisdom it needed to face new dawns, a hopeful synthesis of past and future bound in the eternal present. Within that expanse of hopes and dreams, Theron found peace, a quiet understanding that though his path had been born from conflict, it was shaped anew by the love and courage of those who dared to imagine a better world. In this realization, he became both a guardian and a creator, crafting legacies out of moments, embracing the infinite dance of time. Ten winters had passed since the fields of Marathon bore witness to Athenian triumph. In that decade, the memory of Persian might had faded like evening shadows against the Grecian hills.
Yet fate, that eternal weaver of destinies, had not finished its tapestry of conflict between East and West. The threads of history, momentarily separated, were destined to intertwine once more in a dance of bronze and blood, of wisdom and sacrifice, a tale that would echo through the corridors of time. Darius, the great king whose ambitions had been thwarted at Marathon, had departed to the realm of ancestors, leaving his crown and unfinished conquest to his son Xerxes. The young ruler's inheritance came with the weight of his father's unrealized dreams, a burden as heavy as the royal diadem upon his brow. In the gilded halls of Persepolis, amid the whispers of courtiers and the subtle fragrance of exotic spices, Xerxes contemplated the restoration of his father's honor and the expansion of an empire already spanning 3 continents. The palace of Persepolis stood as a testament to Persian civilization, its columns soaring toward heaven, its walls adorned with reliefs depicting subjects from distant lands bringing tribute to their sovereign lord. Within these walls, council meetings stretched late into the night as advisors debated the wisdom of renewing conflict with the stubborn Greeks. Mardonius, a seasoned general and Xerxes' cousin, advocated for the glory to be won, while the wise Artabanus, Xerxes' uncle, counseled caution. But the allure of conquest proved stronger than warnings of potential disaster, and as months passed, Xerxes' resolve hardened into certainty. Hellas would be added to his empire, whatever the cost. Across the Aegean, in Athens, Theron, once a youth forged in the crucible of the First Persian War, had matured into a respected strategist whose wisdom was sought in council chambers. The lines of experience etched upon his face told of battles won and lessons earned through sacrifice. His hair, once the rich brown of fertile soil, now bore strands of silver at the temples, like the first frost touching autumn leaves. The city he defended had flourished in peace, its marble temples reaching skyward as if in gratitude to the gods who had favored their cause. On mornings when the sea lay calm as polished bronze, Theron would climb the winding path to the Acropolis. From this vantage point, where heaven and earth seemed to converse through the medium of architecture, he would gaze across the city sprawled below, a living testament to what could be achieved when freedom flourished. The agora buzzed with commerce and debate. Philosophers gathered students beneath the shade of olive trees, and artisans bent over their crafts with the precision born of tradition and innovation intertwined. In the harbour of Piraeus, a forest of masts swayed gently with the tide. Athens' growing naval power, championed by the far-sighted Themistocles. This fleet, born from the silver veins of Laurium's mines, represented a new direction for Athenian strength, one that had met resistance from traditionalists, but had found in Theron a stalwart advocate. The wooden walls of these ships would indeed become their salvation should the shadow of Persia fall upon them once more. But winds of change stirred across the Aegean, carrying whispers of a storm gathering in the east. Intelligence arrived on swift ships, brought by merchants who had glimpsed the stirrings of an empire preparing for war. Xerxes was amassing a force unparalleled in human history. The Persian Empire, spanning from the Indus to the Nile, from the steppes of Scythia to the sands of Arabia, had drawn soldiers from every corner of its vast domain. The army that approached was not merely a military force. It was a migration of humanity, diverse in language and custom, but unified under the golden standard of Persia. The first harbingers of this news were dismissed as exaggerations.
tales grown in the telling as they passed from port to port. But as more reports arrived, each confirming and expanding upon the last, the reality of the threat became impossible to ignore. In the household of Theron, where olive oil lamps cast gentle light upon walls adorned with painted scenes of pastoral tranquility, a sombre mood descended. His wife, Lyra, a woman whose strength lay in her quiet dignity, sensed the changing currents without needing words to confirm them. Their son, Alexandros, had just reached his 17th year, a youth on the cusp of manhood, with his father's thoughtful gaze and his mother's resolute spirit. Born in the aftermath of Marathon, he had grown up in a city reveling in its hard-won peace, surrounded by tales of heroism that seemed to belong to the realm of myth rather than memory. Now, as the spectre of war loomed once more, he would face the same trial by fire that had shaped his father's generation. Within the hallowed walls of the ecclesia, Athens' assembly of citizens, debates raged like summer fires, fierce and consuming. Some advocated for appeasement, their voices trembling with the memory of Persian arrows darkening the skies. Others, including Theron, stood firm in their resolve. Athens would not bow, would not offer earth and water as symbols of submission to a foreign monarch. No matter how vast his realm or how numerous his armies, this was no ordinary decision. It was a crossroads where the very identity of Athens hung in the balance. Themistocles, whose political acumen was matched only by his vision for Athens' future, spoke with measured conviction of preserving not merely lives, but freedom itself. His words struck chords of resonance within the hearts of those assembled, though not all were immediately swayed. Aristides, called the Just for his unwavering integrity, advocated for caution rather than rashness, for diplomatic efforts rather than immediate confrontation. The debate continued through the day and into the night, passionate yet principled, a testament to the democratic process that set Athens apart from her neighbors and adversaries alike. The decision to resist was not Athens alone to make. Messengers traveled to Sparta and other city-states, bearing pleas for unity against the common threat. In this hour of need, the quarrelsome Greeks found common purpose, though not without hesitation and discord. The Hellenic League formed, a fragile alliance of independent cities united by the shadow of Persian conquest. In Sparta, where warriors were molded from childhood to uphold traditions of military excellence, the decision to join the alliance came not without internal struggle. The ephors, those 5 magistrates who held authority even over Sparta's kings, hesitated to commit forces beyond the Peloponnese. Yet the voice of Leonidas, one of Sparta's dual monarchs, prevailed with the understanding that should Athens fall, Sparta's isolation would become her vulnerability. As couriers returned to Athens with pledges of support, Theron allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. In his courtyard, where fountains murmured soothing melodies and birds sought refuge in the branches of a pomegranate tree, he sat with Kairos, his old companion from Marathon. Time had transformed the once impetuous youth into a bear of a man. His beard now shot through with silver, his laughter less frequent but no less genuine when it came. They reflected on the weight of war, knowing its terrible cost, yet understanding that freedom, once tasted, could never be surrendered without diminishing the essence of what made them men rather than subjects. As winter yielded to spring in the year 480 BCE, The colossal Persian army began its westward march. The earth itself seemed to groan beneath the weight of countless feet, the dust of their passage visible from distant mountain peaks. Xerxes, determined to bridge the divide between continents, commanded a feat of engineering that left even his own generals in awe, a pontoon bridge spanning the Hellespont, where Asia reached toward Europe with fingers of land. Imagine the scene. Massive ships lashed together, side by side, their decks overlaid with timber and earth to form a path across the strait. Cables, thick as a man's arm, twisted from flax and papyrus, strained against the current, anchoring the vessels in place. Engineers directed armies of workers, their skin glistening with sweat beneath the spring sun, their hands calloused from labor that seemed to challenge the very boundaries set by the gods. And overseeing it all, seated upon a throne of gold on a hillside overlooking the strait, Xerxes, son of Darius, king of kings, lord of the four quarters of the earth. When the first contingents of his vast army set foot upon European soil, a sense of destiny fulfilled must have surged through the great king's veins. The procession that followed was a spectacle of imperial might. Infantry from 100 provinces, their armor and weapons as varied as their origins. Cavalry mounted on steeds bred for speed and endurance. Supply wagons laden with provisions to feed multitudes. Even engineers with siege equipment to overcome any fortification that dared stand in their path. Reports of this crossing reached Athens through the network of messengers established by the Hellenic League. In the council chamber, maps were unfurled on tables of polished marble, markers representing known Persian positions adjusted daily as intelligence arrived. Theron studied these movements with the focused concentration of a physician diagnosing a patient's ailment. The Persian advance would likely come through Thessaly, where terrain offered fewer challenges for so large a force. The Greeks would need to prepare defences at Thermopylae, where the narrowness of the pass would negate their enemies' advantage in numbers. Below them, Athens pulsed with preparations for the coming storm. Artisans who once crafted vases and statues now bent their skills to the making of weaponry. Women wove cloaks that would shield their men from the chill of night watches, their fingers working with dexterity born of love and necessity. Children too young to understand the full import of events nevertheless absorbed the tension that permeated the very air, their games taking on martial themes that mimicked the adult world around them. In the household of Theron, Alexandros prepared for his first taste of battle with the solemnity of youth on the threshold of irreversible change. Lyra helped him don his armor, a breastplate burnished to a soft glow, greaves that protected legs still lean with adolescence, a helmet adorned with a crest of horsehair dyed the deep blue of the Aegean. As she worked, her hands steady, despite the fear that must have clutched at her heart, she sang softly, an ancient melody from her childhood, its lyrics speaking of homecomings and hearth fires burning in welcome. The strategy that emerged from councils of war was born of necessity and intimate knowledge of their homeland. The narrow pass of Thermopylae, the hot gates, would be where Greek hoplites would make their stand on land, while the Strait of Artemisium would witness the clash of triremes upon the wine-dark sea. In these confined spaces, Persian numbers would count for less, allowing Greek discipline and valor to level the uneven odds. When summer reached its zenith, with fields golden under Helios's gaze, the Persian host arrived at Thermopylae. Leading the Greek defenders was Leonidas of Sparta, with his 300 chosen warriors and contingents from other cities, including Thespiae and Phocis. These men, standing as the vanguard of Greek resistance, knew the likely outcome of their mission, yet embraced it with the stoic acceptance that has become synonymous with Spartan ethos. Theron, assigned to the Athenian naval forces at Artemisium, bid farewell to those who would hold the narrow path. Among the departing soldiers was a contingent of young Athenians, Alexandros among them, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and determination as they prepared to witness warfare's terrible spectacle for the first time. This parting between father and son was laden with unspoken emotions: pride, love, the desperate hope for reunion. As the land forces marched northward to their appointed post, Theron joined the crews, boarding the triremes that would sail to Artemisium. These vessels, sleek as predatory fish, represented Athens's investment in naval power, an investment championed by Themistocles against significant opposition. Each ship carried a complement of oarsmen, marines, and archers, their combined efforts transforming wood and sail into instruments of war. The journey northward along the coast of Euboea allowed time for reflection. Theron, standing at the prow of his assigned vessel, watched as dolphins played in the bow wave, their sleek bodies arcing through azure waters with a grace that seemed to mock the clumsiness of human endeavors. The coastline slipped past, rocky promontories giving way to sheltered coves, fishing villages perched on hillsides, olive groves silvered by sea breezes. It was a landscape worth defending, not merely for its beauty, but for the way of life it nurtured. At Artemisium, the Greek fleet took position, triremes arranged with the precision of a phalanx adapted to maritime conditions. Across the strait, the Persian navy gathered, a forest of masts and sails representing maritime traditions from Egypt to Phoenicia, from Cyprus to the coastal cities of Ionia. The disparity in numbers was sobering, yet the Greek commanders maintained outward confidence, knowing that morale would be as crucial as tactics in the coming engagement. The battle that unfolded at Thermopylae has passed into legend, a tale whispered with reverence around hearth fires for generations to come. For 7 days, the narrow pass became the focal point of two civilizations in collision. Greek shields formed an unyielding wall against which waves of Persian attackers broke like sea foam upon rocky shores. The martial prowess of Sparta's warriors, complemented by the courage of their allies, transformed a geographical bottleneck into an abattoir where Persian numerical superiority counted for naught. Messengers brought reports of the land battle to the fleet at Artemisium, tales of Spartan discipline holding firm against multiple assaults, of Persian immortals themselves repulsed with heavy losses, of Xerxes watching in frustrated rage as his mighty host was stymied by a force a fraction of its size. These accounts bolstered the spirits of the naval forces as they prepared for their own trial by combat. Even as Thermopylae played host to heroism and sacrifice, the waters of Artemisium churned with naval conflict. Athenian triremes, sleek and maneuverable, darted between larger Persian vessels. Theron, commanding one such ship, witnessed the fury of Poseidon as a storm claimed Persian ships by the score, divine intervention tilting scales too imbalanced for mortal strength alone. The naval battle unfolded over 3 days, a struggle as much against the elements as against the enemy. On the first day, Greek ships formed a defensive circle, their bronze-sheathed rams pointing outward like the spines of a sea urchin. Persian vessels seeking to encircle this formation found themselves fighting against coastal currents unfamiliar to their pilots. Night brought no respite, for a summer storm descended upon the strait, its winds howling like spirits of the unquiet dead. Lightning split the darkness, illuminating waves that rose like liquid mountains before crashing down with devastating force. The Greek ships, sheltered in the lee of Euboea, weathered the tempest with minimal losses. The Persian fleet, anchored in more exposed waters, suffered grievously. Dozens of vessels dashed against rocks or capsized by the fury of the elements. Dawn revealed a sea littered with debris, splintered timbers, waterlogged supplies, bodies of drowned sailors carried by currents toward distant shores. The Persians, despite these losses, still maintained numerical superiority and renewed their attack with vengeful determination. For 2 more days, the waters around Artemisium became a theatre of desperate courage, tactical innovation, and the cruel impartiality of fate. Theron's trireme participated in a maneuver that would later be adopted as standard naval tactics. Several Greek ships, including his own, arranged themselves in a line abreast and charged directly at a larger Persian formation. At the last moment, they veered apart, causing confusion in the enemy ranks. As Persian ships attempted to pursue individual targets, they lost cohesion, allowing Greek vessels to isolate and ram them one by one. During one such engagement, Theron's ship rammed a Phoenician vessel amidships, the bronze-sheathed prow splintering through the enemy ship's hull with a sound like the cracking of massive bones. As the vessels locked together momentarily before disengaging, Theron caught a glimpse of the fear in the eyes of a young Persian officer, a reminder that beneath the grand narratives of imperial ambition and defensive heroism lay the simple truth of individual human beings facing mortality. But even the gods could not entirely halt the Persian advance. On the 7th day of battle at Thermopylae, a local shepherd named Ephialtes, motivated by the promise of reward, revealed to the Persians a hidden path that circumvented the pass. This act of betrayal, his name forever after synonymous with treachery, allowed Persian forces to outflank the Greek defenders. Leonidas, learning of this development, dismissed the bulk of his allies, keeping with him only his Spartans and those Thespians and Thebans who chose to remain. Their sacrifice, a deliberate decision to stand against insurmountable odds, bought precious time for the rest of Greece to prepare its defences. The news of Thermopylae's fall reached the Greek fleet at Artemisium through a swift messenger vessel. With the land route now open to the Persian advance, the strategic value of maintaining the naval position at Artemisium diminished. Themistocles ordered a withdrawal southward towards Salamis. As the Greek fleet sailed past the cape of Artemisium, Theron gazed toward the distant shore where Thermopylae lay. Though too far to discern details, he imagined he could see the final stand of Leonidas and his men, a circle of shields growing ever smaller as Persian arrows and spears took their toll. It was an image that would remain with him through the trials yet to come, a standard of sacrifice against which all future actions would be measured. The withdrawal was not without incident. Persian ships, emboldened by the news from Thermopylae, pursued the Greek fleet along the coast of Euboea. Rearguard actions became necessary, with Greek triremes turning to engage pursuers, buying time for their comrades to continue southward. During one such skirmish, Theron's ship faced 3 Persian vessels simultaneously. Through a combination of skilled seamanship and the desperate courage of men fighting to protect their retreat, they managed to sink one pursuer and damage another before breaking off engagement. Athens, lying open to the Persian path, faced a decision unprecedented in its history. The oracle at Delphi had spoken of wooden walls as the city's salvation, an enigmatic message interpreted by Themistocles as their fleet of ships. With heavy hearts, Athenians abandoned their beloved city, carrying what treasures they could to the island of Salamis. The evacuation of Athens was an undertaking of logistical complexity, matched only by the emotional toll it exacted. Families gathered what possessions could be transported: religious icons, ancestral heirlooms, essential tools of livelihood. Carts creaked beneath loads balanced precariously, drawn by oxen or pulled by human hands along roads choked with the dust of thousands of footsteps. The elderly moved with painful slowness, supported by the young whose own burdens were lightened by the strength of youth, but made heavier by the uncertainty of their future. From Salamis they watched as Persian flames claimed Athens, smoke rising like a funeral shroud above the Parthenon. The sacred olive tree within Athena's temple, said to have been planted by the goddess herself, was burned to a blackened husk. Yet even amid this desecration, a symbol of hope emerged. For the very next day, witnesses reported seeing a green shoot sprouting from the burned trunk, a living testament to the resilience that characterized the Athenian spirit. In this darkest hour, a plan took shape within Themistocles' mind, a strategy born of desperation and genius. The narrow strait between Salamis and the mainland would be where fate would be decided, not through direct confrontation of unequal forces, but through guile and intimate knowledge of local waters. Themistocles understood not only the maritime conditions that would favor Greek ships, but also the psychology of his adversary, Xerxes' need to achieve a decisive victory to maintain the momentum of his campaign. Through calculated misinformation, delivered by a trusted slave sent to the Persian camp with a message of feigned betrayal, Themistocles lured the Persian fleet into the confined waters of the strait. Xerxes, eager to believe that elements within the Greek coalition were ready to defect, ordered his navy to blockade both entrances to the strait, preventing any Greek escape during the night. This very act of encirclement created the conditions for Persian defeat. As dawn broke over the strait on that fateful day in late September, Greek triremes surged forward from their concealed positions along Salamis's shoreline. The Persian fleet, which had maintained station through the night in anticipation of preventing Greek escape, found itself in disarray. Ships crowded together in narrow waters, captains unable to maneuver effectively. The numerical advantage that should have guaranteed victory transformed into a liability. The waters turned crimson as Theron and his fellow Athenians fought with the ferocity of those defending not merely land, but an entire way of life. Greek triremes, their crews rested after a night in port, rammed Persian vessels whose oarsmen were exhausted from maintaining position through the hours of darkness. The bronze rams tore through enemy hulls, opening mortal wounds in the wooden bodies of ships that began to list and sink, spilling their crews into waters already crowded with the flotsam of battle. Theron's ship claimed 3 Persian vessels, the skill of his helmsman allowing them to strike and disengage before enemy marines could board in significant numbers. From his position on the command deck, Theron witnessed individual acts of heroism amid the larger tapestry of the battle. An oarsman continuing to pull his weight despite an arrow protruding from his shoulder. A marine leaping aboard an enemy vessel to clear its deck single-handedly. A helmsman steering with uncanny precision despite the chaos surrounding him. By day's end, the sea was littered with shattered vessels and floating debris, the remnants of Persian naval power. Hundreds of ships had been sunk, thousands of sailors and marines drowned or captured. Xerxes, watching from a golden throne upon the shore, witnessed the unraveling of his ambitions. The great king, his fleet crippled and his supply lines vulnerable, made the fateful decision to retreat with the bulk of his forces, leaving his general Mardonius to continue the campaign with a smaller army. For Theron, the aftermath of Salamis brought news both bitter and sweet. Alexandros had survived the engagement at Thermopylae, escaping with the contingent dismissed by Leonidas before the final stand. The young man returned to his father, changed, no longer the youth who had set forth with dreams of glory, but a warrior who had witnessed the reality of combat and found it both more terrible and more ennobling than he had imagined. Winter came, bringing respite from conflict, but no resolution to the Persian threat. Mardonius and his forces withdrew to the plains of Thessaly, where they would await the spring to resume their campaign. The fertile lands of this region provided sustenance for the remaining Persian army, a force still numbering in the tens of thousands despite the losses incurred during the initial invasion. The Greeks used this interlude to strengthen their alliance, to heal wounds both physical and spiritual, and to prepare for the campaign that spring would bring. Throughout this period, Theron divided his time between military preparations and brief visits to Trojan, where Lyra awaited news with the patient fortitude that had characterized her response to the war's upheavals. Their reunions provided anchors of normality in lives disrupted by conflict, simple meals shared in borrowed quarters, walks along unfamiliar shorelines, conversations that deliberately avoided dwelling on the uncertainties that lay ahead. When soft breezes heralded the return of spring in 479 BCE, the largest Greek army ever assembled marched northward to confront the Persian force. Nearly 40,000 hoplites, representing 24 city-states, moved with the disciplined precision that had become the hallmark of Greek warfare. Their shields gleamed in the spring sunshine, each emblazoned with the emblem of its owner's city. The lambda of Lacedaemon, the owl of Athens, the club of Thebes, symbols of individual identity united in common purpose. Near the small town of Plataea, beneath the shadow of Mount Cithaeron, the final confrontation of the Second Persian War would unfold. The terrain here was varied, open plains that favored Persian cavalry giving way to broken ground where Greek infantry could negate that advantage, streams that would influence the positioning of forces, gentle hills that offered opportunities for tactical oversight of the developing battle. Theron, having survived Salamis, now stood among the Athenian hoplites, his shield bearing the owl of Athena. Beside him was Alexandros, no longer the untested youth who had marched to Thermopylae, but a seasoned warrior whose eyes had witnessed both the darkness of war and the light of sacrifice that gave it meaning. Around them were men who had known nothing but war and threat since early youth, their faces weathered but their eyes clear with purpose.
Across the field, Persian standards fluttered in the wind, exotic and colourful against the muted landscape of Boeotia. For days the armies manoeuvred cautiously, each seeking favourable ground. Mardonius, commanding the Persian forces, attempted to lure the Greeks into open terrain where his cavalry could operate effectively. Pausanias, the Spartan regent who held overall command of the Greek forces, countered these efforts with patient restraint, maintaining positions where the advantage of Persian mobility would be minimized. This strategic dance continued through the waning days of summer, a prelude to the inevitable clash of civilizations. Dawn arrived with the clarity that often precedes momentous events, the landscape revealed in crisp detail as the sun's first rays crested Mount Cithaeron. A series of incidents, some planned, others the result of chance, precipitated the battle that had been building through days of maneuver and counter-maneuver. A raid on Greek supply lines by Persian cavalry provoked a response that escalated beyond its initial scope. What began as a skirmish expanded as reinforcements were committed by both sides, the engagement growing like a flame fed by wind until the full armies were drawn into conflict. When battle was finally joined in earnest, it was with a fury that seemed to shake the earth. Across ground still damp with morning dew, the opposing forces surged toward each other, a human tide of bronze and iron, of flesh and bone, of courage and fear. The sound was tremendous, a cacophony of clashing metal, thudding shields, shouted commands, and the wordless cries of men embracing their most primal emotions. The discipline of Greek phalanxes prevailed against Persian cavalry and infantry, their coordinated movements a dance of bronze and iron that spoke of countless hours of training. Each hoplite was part of a greater whole, his shield protecting not only himself but the comrade to his left, his spear striking not merely for personal glory but for the integrity of the formation. This unity of purpose transformed individual warriors into a collective entity that moved and fought with the precision of a single organism. Theron found himself at the heart of the Athenian contingent, the familiar rhythm of combat settling over him like a second skin. There was a strange comfort in the simplicity of battle, where complex philosophical and political considerations gave way to the elemental struggle for survival. His spear thrust and withdrew with practiced efficiency, each movement calculated to maintain the integrity of the phalanx while exacting maximum toll on the enemy. Beside him, Alexandros fought with the combination of technique and instinct that marked a natural warrior, his youth lending speed and his experience providing judgment. As the battle progressed, the Persian resistance began to falter. Mardonius, recognizing the turning tide, committed his reserves in a desperate attempt to restore momentum. Mounted on a white charger that seemed to float above the chaos of the battlefield, the Persian commander led from the front, his golden armor gleaming like a beacon. It was a display of personal courage that commanded respect even from those who opposed his cause. But courage alone could not overcome the discipline and determination of the Greek forces. As Mardonius pressed forward into the thick of combat, he became separated from his bodyguard, a momentary isolation that proved fatal. A javelin, cast by an unknown hand from within the Spartan ranks, found the gap between breastplate and helmet. Mardonius fell, his body lost beneath the press of advancing hoplites, his death marking the beginning of the end for Persian resistance. By mid-afternoon, what had been a battle transformed into a rout.
Persian forces broke and fled, seeking safety in their fortified camp or in the promise of distance from the battlefield. The Greek pursuit was methodical rather than frenzied, maintaining formation even in victory, a discipline that prevented the overextension that might have turned triumph into disaster. Theron, moving forward with the Athenian contingent, witnessed the aftermath of conflict spreading across the plain of Plataea. Bodies lay where they had fallen, Greek and Persian alike rendered equal in death as they had never been in life. Amidst this tapestry of suffering, individual acts of compassion emerged. A Greek warrior offering water to a dying Persian, a physician tending wounds without regard for the nationality of his patients, comrades carrying fallen friends from the field with gentle hands that belied their recent violence. Even in victory, the cost was evident in the faces of survivors, a solemn acknowledgement that what had been won came at a price, measured in blood and lives. From the north came news of yet another triumph. At Mycale, Greek forces had destroyed the beached Persian fleet and defeated the forces guarding it. This dual victory, like twin blades of a scissors cutting through the fabric of Persian ambition, effectively ended the Second Persian War. Xerxes's dream of adding Greece to his empire lay in ruins, as tangible as the wreckage of ships and the bodies of fallen soldiers now returning to the earth from which they came. In the aftermath, as cities rebuilt and fields renewed their bounty, Theron returned once more to Athens. Standing amidst the ruins of the Acropolis, he watched as citizens laid the first stones of what would become a more magnificent Parthenon, a temple not merely to Athena, but to the enduring spirit of a people who had faced annihilation and emerged transcendent. Lyra joined him there, returned from Troezen with emotions as complex as his own, relief at reunion, sorrow for all that had been lost, determination to contribute to the rebuilding of their beloved city. Together they stood amid scaffolding and half-carved marble blocks, witnesses to the resilience that defines the human spirit at its finest. The Second Persian War had ended, its conclusion writing the prelude to what historians would later call the Golden Age of Athens. From the crucible of conflict emerged art, philosophy, and democracy that would illuminate the path of Western civilization for millennia to come. The dramatists, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides would craft tragedies that explored the depths of human experience. Philosophers would question the nature of reality and justice in an ongoing dialogue that continues to this day. Architects and sculptors would create works of such perfection that they remain touchstones of aesthetic achievement. Theron, his hair now fully silvered by the passage of years, would live to see the flowering of this cultural renaissance. As an elder statesman, he contributed his wisdom to the governance of Athens under the leadership of Pericles, that visionary who understood that true greatness lies not in conquest but in creation. Alexandros, recovered from his wounds at Plataea, followed a path that diverged from yet honored his father's legacy, drawn to the emerging philosophical schools that questioned the nature of existence and humanity's place within it. In his final years, Theron understood, with the clarity that sometimes comes only in life's final chapter, that the true victory of Greece over Persia was not merely military, but philosophical. The Persian Empire, for all its material splendor and administrative efficiency, represented a world where individuals existed to serve the state and its divine monarch. Greece, and Athens in particular, offered an alternative vision, one where the state existed to serve its citizens, where individuals could question authority and tradition without fear, where human potential might be fulfilled in art and thought as much as in war and commerce. When death finally came to him, it arrived not as the violent intruder he had often faced on battlefields, but as a gentle companion, escorting him from one state of being to another with the same dignity that had characterized his life. And so, as stars appeared in the velvet expanse above the Aegean, the tale of the Second Persian War became part of the eternal tapestry of human striving, a testament to the courage of those who dared to stand against overwhelming odds for the sake of their children's tomorrows. In the majestic city of Troy, nestled along the shimmering waters of the Aegean Sea, there lived a young boy named Callias. The tales woven through the bustling markets spoke of Troy's impenetrable walls, which stood like mighty sentinels against the trials of time. Only the strongest and most skilled artisans could have crafted such fortifications, a marvel whispered to have been commissioned by the gods themselves. Callias grew up under the gentle shadow of these towering walls, with an unbending belief that nothing could harm his beloved city. Each morning he'd play alongside the other children, their laughter echoing alongside the brick paths that wound like Alps' spiral snail shell through the stone streets of the city. They darted between merchants who offered vibrant silks and wares brought from distant lands, a testament to Troy's prosperity. His father, a learned philosopher, would recite tales of heroism and divine favor over evening meals, instilling in Callias a deep pride in his Trojan heritage. The gods were always watching, so they were told, and Troy was their favored jewel, an eternal flame in an ever-darkening world. Callias took comfort in these stories, believing his city to be eternal, untouched by the chaos that sometimes whispered at the edges of their peace. Yet in the sea breeze there mingled secrets, fragments of unease carried from foreign lands. The growing might of Greece loomed like a quiet storm on the horizon. Foreign kings and their insatiable ambitions are rumoured to have their eyes set upon Troy, the city of Enos. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world was painted in shades of gold, Callias's elder brother returned from a venture with tales of distant conflicts. He recounted a Greek princess, Helen, whose fate now intertwined with Troy's. The whispers grew louder, filled with tidings of war, a quarrel among the gods that transcended mortal affairs, reaching the very heart of Callias's home. Despite the mounting signs, Callias held tightly to his father's words. The citizens went about their days, believing in the invulnerability granted by the walls that loomed overhead. Dreams of endless peace clouded theirs, just as gently as the clouds veiled the peaks of Ida on soft autumn mornings. But life continued, and the sun rose and fell, as if paying homage to the city without reprieve. Callias continued to roam through the fragrant gardens and winding streets, never considering even the possibility that change was coming. For in his heart, Troy was timeless, a sanctuary where the past, present, and future were forever intertwined. As the seasons danced subtly from vibrant summer to the gentle embrace of autumn, life in Troy carried on. Callias delighted in long afternoons spent beneath the city's ancient olive trees, while the whispers of market gossip occasionally found their way to his eager ears. His days unfolded with the same rhythm he had always known, a waltz of predictability and joy. However, the tales of Helen, the woman said to have launched 1,000 ships,
began to permeate even the most secluded corners of the city. She had been brought to Troy by Paris, a Trojan prince whose love for her was matched only by the fury it had ignited across the Aegean. The Greeks, once distant and nebulous figures in Troy's history, were now formidable rivals, their power a stark contrast to Callias's idyllic life. The air quivered with anticipation and anxiety as steeds from across the realm galloped through Trojan gates. They carried men of valor and arms, allies sworn to King Priam, the revered ruler of Troy. Callias watched, perched on the stone railing that guarded his favorite view of the port, as silhouettes of ships burgeoned daily against the skyline, a shadowy armada that laid claim to the waters. The Greeks had come, their ships a fleet of unparalleled might, led by kings and warriors of legend, Agamemnon, Achilles, and Odysseus among them. They sought Helen's return, demanding what they claimed was theirs. Yet for all their power, the Greek forces found themselves halted by the formidable fortifications that had bred Callias's certitude in Troy's eternal security. As the siege unfolded, life within the walls strained but did not falter. The citizens rallied, hearts steeled by their belief in the divine providence of their city. Callias's father joined in the intellectual battles of strategy, helping to fortify defenses by night and recounting tales of ancient sieges by day. Callias listened, absorbing each story, a sponge to the world's knowledge and fears. Troy's defenders, bolstered by allies from neighboring lands who responded to calls of kinship and honor, managed to hold the Greeks at bay. They repelled assaults with valor, wielding not just bronze and iron, but the indomitable spirit of a people whose roots clung tenaciously to their storied soil. But Callias, though enraptured by the stirring battles unfolding beyond his view, could not ignore the subtle changes that shadowed his once carefree adventures. For while the city stood firm, the realization of their struggle began to flicker beneath Troy's timeless gleam. Food grew scarcer, and the bustling energy that had once characterized the marketplace was replaced by quiet resolve. And yet, the walls still stood, the gates held. For Callias and others like him, the unyielding spirit of their people sustained their hope, each day a new brushstroke in a canvas that refused to acknowledge its own unraveling. As he gazed towards the horizon where the siege lines were drawn so far from his world, he whispered a silent oath to the serenity he cherished and the city he loved. For now the sun continued its steady rise and fall over Troy's steadfast walls. As the years toiled quietly on, the siege continued its relentless grasp upon Troy, transforming from a distant tale into an ever-present reality for young Callias. Though still resilient, the city bore the marks of time and conflict, its people carrying the weight of war as a constant companion. Life persisted within the formidable walls, a testament to Trojan resilience amid adversity. The tides of battle ebbed and flowed like the whispering sea, and whispers of new heroes and tragedies reached Callias's ears. Among these was the tale of Hector, noble prince and defender of Troy, whose valor in combat inspired awe and fortified the courage of Troy's beleaguered people. Hector's duels with the Greeks, particularly with the fierce Achilles, became the living legends of Callias's childhood, a brave testament to Troy's indomitable spirit. Yet the very night seemed to herald omens of change. One particular evening, the sound of wailing reached Callias's window. News of Hector's fall at the hands of Achilles had spread like wildfire through the city. The once unyielding strength seemed, if only momentarily, to flicker, and Callias felt an unfamiliar weight upon his young heart. In this crack of their armor, he glimpsed a vulnerability he had never acknowledged might exist within the ancient walls of Troy. As the city mourned the beloved prince, Achilles himself would not remain unscathed. The stories rumbled through the city streets of how Paris, skilled with the bow and guided by Apollo, avenged his brother by striking down the mighty Greek hero with an arrow to the heel. For a brief moment, hope flickered anew in the hearts of Troy's warriors. They could stand against the greatest of foes. However, the war's persistence chipped away at their resilience, the siege shifting from one of bold assaults to a continual chafing at their spirit. With his childish pursuits giving way to early manhood, Callias found himself drawn to the responsibilities of city life, his innocence slowly relinquished to the harsh reality of war. In the uneasy truce of seemingly endless cycles, new arrivals to the Greek camps signalled grim intentions. A sudden departure by the Greek armies brought whispers of both relief and suspicion across Troy's squares. Cunning Odysseus, renowned for his guile, had devised a stratagem, a gift of towering wood, the guise of surrender. Within Troy, the vision of the wooden horse sparked debate. Some argued prudence and caution, while others embraced it as a trophy of their resilience. In the end, the people, eager for closure and celebration, drew the horse into the safety of their walls, a choice that danced dangerously with the fate of the city. As dusk unfolded and the ruse unravelled, suspicion slumbered while celebration blossomed. Yet as Callias retired that night, the familiar comfort of Troy's embrace, his dreams whispered to him discordant notes, a shadow looming larger than the city's stone pillars, an echo of dread, unsought but relentless. The story of Troy's downfall was yet to conclude, but within the slumbering city, a seed of profound change had furtively taken root. A wooden horse now harboured their fate. The morning sun rose with a deceptive calmness over the city of Troy, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, as if heralding a new era of peace. Callias awoke to an air of celebration that still lingered from the previous evening's festivities. The colossal wooden horse, now settled within the heart of the city, stood as a symbol of what seemed to be Troy's hard-won victory. Yet even as the city hummed with an unusual vibrancy, a gnawing unease gnawed at the edges of Callias's thoughts. The stories recounted by his father about war and subterfuge echoed in his mind, stirring a restlessness he could not shake, venturing into the open streets. He was swept into the tide of joyous Trojans who gathered around the towering structure, marveling at the craftsmanship and heralding it as a divine sign of their endurance. Callias noticed something curious. The priests and elders, who typically offered counsel and caution at the whispers of strange omens, now stood silent and complacent. As if spellbound by the shared euphoria of victory, they too had chosen to overlook the unease whispered by the winds of war. But Callias was not the only one who harboured doubts. As he wandered, he found himself beside Laocoon, a respected seer and priest of Apollo, who gazed warily at the wooden horse. With a voice tinged with urgency, Laocoon defiantly cried that the gift was a Greek trick, a warning he elucidated with fervour, urging the city to heed caution. Yet as if in response to his plea, a sign of divine wrath intervened. Serpents emerged from the depths and silenced Laocoon's voice tragically. Dismissed as divine retribution against sacrilege, Laocoon's fate did little to sway the jubilant Trojans, who continued in their antics. Callias, however, felt an insistent tug at his conscience, the echoes of his father's stories ringing clearer than ever. As night descended upon Troy, casting long shadows across its storied walls, an uneasy anticipation settled upon Callias. The city slept in a weary embrace, laying down their worries and fears as they basked in what they believed to be safety. It was this silence that preceded the storm, a tranquil veneer masking the shifting undercurrent that Callias's keening mind sensed but could not fully comprehend. In the depth of the night, as Callias lay awake with thought, the whispers of history unspooled. From the belly of the wooden horse, the Greek warriors emerged, threading silently through the cobbled streets, as if orchestrated by the inexorable hands of fate. They set upon Troy with a swiftness and ferocity that belied the peace from which they had thus far abstained. Fires sprang to life against the sombre sky, illuminating the betrayal wrought from within. Callias, roused by the growing tumult, stumbled into a nightmare realized, a city engulfed in chaos, its walls breached not by force but by deceit. As the conflagration spread, Callias felt the undercurrents of history shift around him, the illusion of invincibility shattering as the Greek tide swept through his beloved Troy. In that moment, everything he had known as eternal crumbled, and the weight of destiny bore down upon him, not as an ending, but the cruel twist in a saga yet unfinished. The city of Troy, once a bastion of hope and history, now lay besieged under a sky thick with smoke and despair. The past night's deceit had shattered the illusions of safety, leaving in its wake a stark reality of war's relentless devastation. Callias, eyes wide with shock and disbelief, scrambled through the chaos, navigating the familiar streets now twisted by destruction. Every corner revealed new horrors. The walls that had stood as symbols of Troy's indomitability now served as backdrops for desperate struggles. The clamour of battle rang through the air, a cacophony of clashing swords and cries, both triumphant and anguished. The Greeks, having emerged from their wooden subterfuge, moved with daunting precision, their ranks sweeping through the city with the inevitability of a storm unleashed. Callias, though young, understood the gravitas of this moment. He moved with determination, driven by a desperate desire to find his family amid the ruins. The path led him to his home, now an echo of the life it had once sheltered. Inside, his father tended to the wounded. His studies in philosophy and strategy turned to the harsh realities of sustaining life. Callias, his father's voice cut through the din, a beacon of familiarity and hope. The two embraced briefly before the elder explained their dire need to evacuate, to seek refuge beyond the crumbling bastions of Troy. Though the city was lost, life persisted, a legacy to preserve beyond its walls. As dawn's light crept cautiously across the devastated landscape, Callias and his family joined a stream of survivors heading towards the city's last stronghold, the citadel. From its perch, King Priam and the remaining noble defenders prepared their final stand, a rallying point for those who still dreamt of defiance and survival. Amidst the crowd, Callias glimpsed the grim determination shared amongst the Trojans. Men and women of courage who, despite their heartbreak, spoke of legends to guide those yet unsure. They drew upon tales of endurance, crafting a tapestry of shared memories to sustain them through the desolation. Callias listened, imprinting these stories in his heart, a bequest to carry forward, yet time was not on their side. As the sun climbed higher, so did the insurmountable presence of Greek forces. With each moment, the breadth of Troy's downfall widened, bringing a new reality to the fore. Wooden splinters, once the city's protection, now littered the streets, bearing silent witness to their betrayal. Huddled within the citadel's confines, Callias felt the shifting balance of power, a delineation between what had been and what was inexorably coming to pass. He understood that this siege marked not just Troy's fall, but the dawning of a new epoch where what remained of their legacy hinged on the resilience. In the aftermath of the tempest that had ravaged Troy, the city's once majestic walls lay broken and scarred. Callias wandered through the smouldering ruins, his heart heavy with the weight of irretrievable loss. The air was thick with the smell of ash and smoke, a grim reminder of the night that had shattered their world. Around him, the survivors moved like phantoms amid the desolation, each grappling with their own fragments of tragedy. The Greeks, now undisputed victors, traversed the ruins with a purpose born of a long-sought triumph. Their faces were a blend of exhaustion and muted jubilation, the spoils of their decade-long siege finally within grasp. Yet to Callias, they were ghosts bearing the demise of everything he held dear, a juxtaposition of conqueror and carrion. Desperate for solace, Callias's feet led him to the temple of Athena, one of the few structures to withstand the onslaught with its integrity mostly intact. Here, the priestesses moved quietly, tending to those seeking refuge or offering whispered prayers of guidance. Despite the destruction surrounding it, the temple remained a sanctuary, a place where Callias felt the whispering echoes of something eternal. It was there he encountered Andromache, wife of the fallen hero Hector, whose face bore the solemn grace of one acquainted with grief. Her presence inspired both awe and empathy within Callias, for she embodied the spirit of Troy, a beacon of resilience amid the ruins. Despite her own losses, she offered comfort to others, a silent testament to the intricate dance of strength and mourning. She shared with Callias the plans to spare the last remnants of Trojan dignity, a desperate hope to salvage some aspect of their identity. While the Greek victors parceled the captives for enslavement or exile, Andromache and the elders whispered of strategies to retain elements of their lineage and culture, even in foreign lands. The notion of preserving Troy's essence, even as its physicality lay in ruin, ignited a flicker of determination within Callias. In hushed conversations, they recounted the long-standing alliances and bonds forged through history, grasping at the threads of their shared existence. Though scattered, they were resolved to carry forth the stories, knowledge, and virtues of their homeland, lest these too become victims of the encroaching oblivion. As Callias stood amid the temple's shadowed columns, a resolute belief stirred within him that the soul of Troy transcended its walls and ashes. The living memory of what once was would continue to echo, not only through songs and stories, but in the shared blood and spirit of those who survived. With this newfound purpose, Callias accepted the reality that while the city of Troy had fallen, its legacy had not. In the interplay of past and future, time's relentless currents would carry forth this story, a testament to both the rise and resilience of a people whose spirit could not be quelled by conquest alone. The flame would endure, flickering brightly in new lands, breathing life into the mythic past from the embers of the present. With the passage of weeks, Troy's landscape transformed from the vivid hues of ruin into the muted tones of occupation. The once bustling city, now a somber shadow of itself, lay under Greek control. The conquerors, though victorious, found themselves contending not only with the spoils of war, but the burden of managing a once great city and its remaining populace. For Callias, life shifted as he adapted to this new milieu of uncertainty. The resilience he had seen in his people inspired him to navigate these uncharted waters of Trojan history with caution and hope. Under the watchful eyes of their new overlords, the remaining Trojans found ways to endure, their identity subtly enfolded into everyday acts of resistance and cultural preservation. Greeks established their presence with fortification, repurposing Troy's defences in the logical occupation of a strategic location. This control was a blend of military might and the pragmatic governance needed to integrate Troy into their expanding domains. Callias watched as the presence of Greek soldiers and their foreign customs slowly seeped into the fragments of daily life, casting shadows across Troy's remaining culture. It was during this time that Callias encountered Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, a figure both feared and resented by the remnants of Troy. Neoptolemus, a product of his warrior lineage and driven by a desire to honor his father's legacy, moved through the fallen city with a mixture of authority and youthful impetuosity. Though an enemy, there was an undeniable charisma to the young warrior,
one that Callias observed cautiously from a distance. One afternoon, fate drew Callias into a direct encounter with Neoptolemus. The Greek prince, intrigued by the youthful Trojan's unwavering gaze and apparent defiance, engaged him in conversation. Initially wary, Callias's knowledge and pride in his heritage piqued Neoptolemus's interest, sparking unexpected dialogues across cultural divides. In these exchanges, Callias cautiously shared perspectives of Troy's history and its heroes, moments tinged with both tension and mutual curiosity. Through these interactions, Callias gleaned insights into the Greeks, their internecine rivalries and ambitions, as revealing as the influence of their myths and gods on their actions. Neoptolemus shared tales of his father Achilles, and as the young men navigated the legacy of their respective forebears, an understanding began to evolve, not of friendship, but of a mutual recognition. As autumn settled upon the land, the seeds of Troy's legacy took root in unlikely places. Though the city lay in ruin, its spirit flickered in the stories exchanged beneath the weary sun, in the shared laughter and quiet query that arose among captors and captives alike. As Callias learned to balance respect and resentment, he realized that even in subjugation there was room for resilience, for moments of genuine humanity to transcend the barriers of conquest. Underneath the scars of Troy, amidst the transformation of physical and cultural landscapes, Callias stood resolved. He bore witness to the quiet resurgence of his people's identity, not static, but dynamic and adaptive, woven into the ever-shifting patterns of history. Unbeknownst to him, it was this very adaptability, the ability to endure and evolve even under the weight of tragedy, that would secure Troy's mythic legacy for generations to come. As the remnants of Troy settled into this new existence under Greek dominion, whispers of fate's inexorable pull threaded subtly through Callias's life. The adaptation to changed circumstances was relentless, the dichotomy of daily survival intertwined with the preservation of cultural pride. Despite his youthful resolve, Callias sensed the inevitable ebb and flow of power shifting around him, reshaping familiar landscapes and beliefs. The Greeks, having established their occupation, faced their own challenges. Managing a land of vast heritage and history required more than mere military power. It demanded understanding and adaptation. Greek administrators began melding their governance with Trojan customs, a pragmatic yet complex tapestry mindful of the city's exalted past. The Greeks, too, were learning to bear the weight of Troy's legacy, even as they imposed their own desires upon it. Within this echo of assimilation and resilience, Callias assumed the mantle of a silent chronicler. He committed his days to gathering stories from the elder Trojans, documenting their shared history, legends and knowledge with a fervour born of necessity. These oral traditions, once the currency of everyday's heart and soul, now became crucial keys for preserving Troy's spirit against the encroaching tide of foreign rule. During this time, Callias developed an unlikely rapport with Helen, formerly the catalyst of war, now a figure of enigma, wrapped in tales far less grandiose than her initial myth. Her presence in Troy, long anticipated as queen, remained filled with ambiguous legacy, her beauty undiminished, her tales reframed by time and conquest. In rare private moments, Callias witnessed in her a wistful reflection of lost innocence and unspoken dreams, a parallel to his own evolving understanding of identity and resilience. The city's transformation included the construction of new temples and the adaptation of existing ones. Though Greek deities now shared spaces once dedicated solely to Trojan gods, devotions intersected, and faith remained a persistent force, portraying the gradual blend of cultures within the city's sacred spaces. In quiet corners of the city, Callias encountered other youth who, like him, sought connection amidst disconnection. They gathered to debate, dream, and dissect the world now unfolding before them.
These meetings beneath the shade of crumbling columns sowed seeds of
camaraderie within the next generation, a tapestry woven from strands of both Greek and Trojan ancestry, each seeking a voice within this nascent ideological blending. Through these endeavors, Callias saw glimpses of a different future. He envisioned a Troy not merely remembered through the ashes of its past, but alive in the identity of its people, continually growing despite adversity. For as each exchange of knowledge and tradition transpired, a silent promise took shape. Wherever the winds of fate might guide them, Troy's heart would withstand the test of time. Approaching adulthood, Callias embraced this fragile continuity, his life becoming a bridge between worlds, past and present, conqueror and conquered, tangible and remembered. This perseverance, born from the ashes of Troy, signaled not an end, but a metamorphosis, one that would ripple through history, defying the constraints of time. As he bore witness to such potential for unity, a young man's resolve transformed into a guardian's vow to carry forward the legacy of an undying spirit entwined with the ceaseless march of history itself. Years passed, and the outlines of Callias's life continued to shift like waves sculpting the shore. The young Trojan, once a mere child, lost in the shadows of Troy's downfall, had grown into a man defined by resilience and purpose. The lessons of the siege, the city's occupation, and the silent strength of his people had woven themselves into his identity, forging a bridge between past and present. The ruins of Troy, now a silent echo of history, found themselves melding increasingly with the frameworks of Greek colony life. New settlements emerged around the once mighty city, built with an intentional synthesis of Trojan and Greek influences. This delicate balance of integration and retention became the defining feature of this evolving landscape, where stories of old gods met new, dialogues flourished, and shared destinies were silently crafted. Though outwardly the Greeks had conquered, Callias understood that the spirit of Troy remained vibrant, more than ink on pages or echoes in song. It lived in the traditions lovingly passed down, in the rituals preserved within families and communities, and in each breath taken by those who considered themselves custodians of an ancient heritage. As the city settled into this unique confluence of cultures, Callias found himself playing a pivotal role, not as a warrior or politician, but as a keeper of history and guardian of memory. He assumed the role of a scribe, working tirelessly to preserve the rich oral traditions and written histories, threading them into chronicles and teachings to ensure the stories of Troy endured. Amidst this new tapestry of life, Callias encountered Helen once more, her life marked by the complexities of peace and reclamation. She had grown into a figure of diplomacy and reconciliation, using her once contentious legacy to bridge the divides between Trojan memory and Greek dominance. Through Helen, Callias gained deeper insight into the art of negotiation, a skill that proved invaluable in navigating the terrain of cultural coexistence. In time, Callias witnessed the seeds of friendship and mutual respect sprout between former adversaries. Though remnants of the past lingered, new partnerships emerged from shared aspirations for growth and discovery. The children of Troy and Greece now played together, embodying a union of histories that their ancestors could scarcely have imagined. In the labyrinth of Troy's ruins, now tinged with new life, Callias walked alongside Neoptolemus, now more ally than adversary, sharing stories of their father's legacies as they reflected on the future they were forging. They recognized a singular truth, that the spirit of Troy was not confined to memory alone, but alive in the generation that would carry its teachings forward. As the sun set over the peaceful harbour, gilding the water with hues of amber, Callias stood at the threshold of promise and possibility. He understood that Troy, once a jewel of power, now a symbol of resilience, lived on not just in stone and story, but in the hearts and minds of its people.
Embedded within them was a steadfast promise, silent yet resounding, to honor the past while embracing what lay ahead. In this quiet moment, with history at his back and the future stretched like a canvas before him, Callias whispered a silent vow to his city to ensure that Troy's centuries-old flame flickered eternally, crafting light against the darkness of oblivion, its glow forever testament to a people who refused to be forgotten.